Wherever you want to be on. Good to go. All right. Well, everyone, please stand with us for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, folks, thanks for coming in tonight. We got a few items on the agenda here. Next up will be the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion? Second discussion. The only discussion I have on the add on there is that we do have someone here now tonight from the student council. We're going to add in student council. It will be under information items and reports. It'll be a 5.0. And Grace will be the speaker tonight for us from student council from the high school. We have her name in there and a new item. Annette, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to suggest moving the approval of policy 6065 to the top of the action items, to the first. Because we have a lot of people here in the audience that are interested in that portion.
But Jim, usually once we said everything, leave it in the order, whatever reason to pull up ahead. I don't see a reason for it.
Well, I make a motion that we move it to 6.7 on the agenda.
6.6.
To 6.0.
Is there a motion and a second to move 6.6 to the top of the action item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hands, I know who said what. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passes 6-3, so we'll move 4-3. We'll move 606.
Or 6. Yeah, approval of policy 6.
Yeah, 6.7, we moved up on top. Yep, when we get there, if we make a mistake, correct it right away, if we talk about it. Okay, any other issues on the adoption of the agenda? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Consideration of visitors, first one up tonight will be Jim. Mr. Jim?
How much minutes to start?
2 minutes. 2 minutes, Jim.
I'd like to talk about the library issue. And I'm a lifelong blood donor, and one of the things they ask every time is if you engage in any of these activities, and some of those activities are in these books. And the Red Cross needs at least 3 months to test blood to make it safe. So if it's not safe for our blood supply, these activities are not safe to be exposed to our children, because they may be making lifelong decisions and they don't have a chance to have anybody tested before they have relationships. So we do have border or crosswalk guards to make sure our kids don't do foolish things. And everybody knows that young kids tend to do foolish things. If we let them right across the street and say you might not get hit by a car, we wouldn't do that to them. And by putting stuff in their library that is exposing them to future danger, I think is irresponsible, because it indicates to them that we approve of this. And I think it's, we have to love our children enough to protect them from themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next up will be Jake Humphrey. Jake?
Thank you for taking the time, school board, cabinet, customers. I'd just like to point out the Veterans Day programs that were given Monday on Veterans Day and Tuesday today, because I really got a lot out of going to these two, and so did the students. Kids were dressed up in red, white, and blue. Some of them were carrying flags. We had Mike Starr speaking at the high school, which was really appreciated by the masses, telling us about the memorial that you guys did recently. And then Mr. Burr spoke at the middle school today, and there was a lot of great stories related. I heard kids sitting right next to me talking about, oh, I want to be in this, but I want to be in this. And so the effect there was great. And I just think it's beautiful that we live in such a patriotic community, and that they value their veterans. And I really appreciate that you guys put that out there for our community to remember. It was well received by the kids and well received by the adults that attended as well. So kudos to you too, and then kudos to this district. And if you've not attended this, I highly suggest going to those programs next year. It was super worthwhile. Thanks.
Great, Jake. Thank you very much. All right, next up, consent agenda. Is there a motion for consent agenda? We have a motion. Is there a second? A second. Thank you, Rob. Discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we move into information items and reports. First one's going to be 5.0, be student council with Grace Sundrew. Grace, come on up.
Okay, I'm representing student council. I'm Grace Sundrew, and I'm here to let you know what's upcoming and happening in our school. So we have an upcoming community night where we have Santa and Mrs. Claus, crafts, games, cookies, a jazz band performance, and a choir concert. And there's also a basketball game on that night. And we have a food drive right now currently in our school. And we have a gratitude wall for the month of November. And then we just got back from our Craig's leadership camp where we learned of ways we can move in our school and help our school. Yeah.
And by the way, Grace is a 10th grader
Yep.
at St. Francis High School, so thank you for coming.
Yeah, and she also knows that in the future, if they wouldn't, Grace, you have to come back up front.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, because consideration of visitors, we don't talk because of discussion, but with you, we do have possible questions. Nate?
What night is that community night?
It is December 13th, I believe, or 14th is Friday. Yeah, December 13th.
And then again, let us know ahead of time, and then what we do, we have a spot at the table for you. And you sit at the table, again, give your presentation, you see there's 2 or 3 other students involved with this. Okay, so you let us know ahead of time, that's a Wednesday before the superintendent Vanessa added to the agenda. Now, myself, I know you're gonna be here.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you, coming. Oh, question.
And you don't have to stay for the entire meeting. You can leave after you get your report.
Yeah.
Your homework. All right, any questions, anyone else? All right, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Okay, first one, the second item up now, under 5 will be 5.1, neutrality in schools. A lot of you have it on your file up here. What I'm looking at too, we got a lot of stuff tonight. I'm looking at 20-minute discussion on neutrality of schools. 20 minutes. So I'll go ahead. Who wants to start it off?
Maybe I'll just kick it off and then, Amy, if you could step in. Some time ago, Amy Kelly requested to discuss the topic of neutrality in schools, which can mean different things to different people. The way I understood it though is that the concept means the importance of not pushing a political or social agenda within a school setting. That's one interpretation anyway, but I think you have a more comprehensive view and maybe can give some more examples. So I did identify some different areas where this can be relevant in the school district. First, in curriculum and instruction might mean that educators refrain from discussing political or social issues, or they share multiple perspectives on controversial topics, so it's not just one opinion, there are multiple perspectives shared. Some people might call this a fair and balanced approach. Others might call it a point-counterpoint approach. We use kind of both phrases here at the school board meetings. Another area where this is notable would be flags and posters in schools. And, it's just another issue that has surfaced over the last several years, actually. There are some stakeholders who expressed concerns to board members about a flag in the high school room. There used to be more posters and flags in the school, but I think most have been removed. But there is still at least one in the high school room. And I outlined some of the key issues as far as making those kinds of decisions. And then the third one, I didn't really say much about it, but it has to do with political advocacy. And so that is not allowed by school policy and state law. And so educators are not allowed to, let's say, bring in Trump or Harris posters, encouraging people to vote in a particular way. That's just not allowed. So those are the three areas that I just briefly highlighted in the background information sheet. And Amy, if you're interested, if you could maybe expand on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, one of my concerns is to ensure that our schools are neutral, that all children will walk in the door and they don't see anything up on the walls that is trying to persuade them in any political way, and to ensure that the discussions within the classroom are also neutral. You made a really nice point of what I was concerned with, and you did a nice job at putting it forth in writing for the board, so I'm pretty comfortable with what you put forth, Karsten.
Any question, Pam?
So I agree with what you said. The problem that I have, and I think the reason why we are having this discussion is because we can say that there's no anti-Trump or anti-Harris, but we saw a video that was anti-Trump and it was pro-vaccination and put the mask on or shut up. And all this was in a video that had nothing to do with the class discussion. It was in a science class, I think, in the middle school. We have also had, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, but I'm going to bring it up because people need to be aware of it. And Carson, you're aware of it, and I believe you took care of it, although I've never followed back to see if it's gone. But there was a huge painting of Mao in the multicultural union room. And when I asked the adult in the room what that was there for, her response to me was, it's there to, for an example to our Vietnamese students of a leader who came from poverty and rose up to be a great leader. Mao was not a great leader. Mao massacred thousands and thousands of people. He's a communist. So why that? Those are, and then there's been and these are the only things that we know of, is because they were brought forward by either parents or students themselves. But another video that was anti-Trump back in 2000, must have been 20, I'm not sure when it was probably the first year I was on board. It was anti-Trump, board, wall building and all that stuff, and it was rhetoric, okay, propaganda and rhetoric that was shown to our students. The other one was literally a discussion that a teacher had, talking about how the Republicans Jimmy rig things and do things, and there was not a counterpoint. So that was a recording. So those are the things, and those are just the things that we are aware of. That's the things that I've been made aware of. There's other things like assignments, I think, that students have brought forward that show that there is definitely a leaning towards, I don't even know what you want to call it, but it's definitely politically driven. So these are the things so we can say that, I appreciate you saying that our teachers are not supposed to promote any of this, but how do we ensure that that's not happening on a regular basis? Because we have no idea what's going on in every classroom. We have no idea. We have to trust. And we've said that we voiced it, but even after we voiced it, these things come up. A neighbor came to me and said, Hillary Clinton t-shirt was being worn by a teacher, and I came in with a Trump t-shirt, and I was told to leave and put on a different shirt. So we can say all these things, but how do we ensure that this is not happening in our classrooms? And I know you can't be in every classroom, Karsten, and I know Stacy can't be, and principals can't be, but these are why we've had these discussions at this table.
Some of those I'm aware of, and I can tell you that we did address them.
Yes.
And I think we address them appropriately. People make mistakes. There are hundreds of thousands of interactions that occur every day in a school our size, and people make mistakes. And so we rely on hearing about those mistakes so we can follow up on it. But I feel really good about how we've handled those particular situations.
So how do we make sure they're not going to happen again? So I hear, okay, people make mistakes. Even though the board has been talking about this for 4 years since I've been on the board, and we've been talking about it. We've had teachers that have come up and wanted to meet with us and have defended themselves, but it still happens. So how do we proactively, what do we have to put in place? So when it happens, what are the actions taken? Is it just with that one teacher, or is it used as an example to say this was shown? If any of you, the rest of you are showing this, I mean, what are we actually doing to for the rest of our schools, teachers, administration, what are we doing to make sure that they're all aware that you may not think it's happening, but right next door to you it happened? And so how do you keep that from happening again and again in different classrooms, different times, in different schools?
I'll throw out a couple of examples of things that we could review or do better. One would be to include information like an employee handbook that specifically talks about not just political advocacy, but also this concept. Because really our goal shouldn't be to sway anyone to our particular opinions. You know, we want a fair and balanced approach so we can hear different perspectives and then let kids decide themselves. You know, it's not our job to convince them one way or the other. Certainly, we can provide more training to teachers and other staff members so we can remind them. Clearly, when there's an incident that arises, you know, we want to talk to the teacher.
It's a teaching opportunity, right?
Yeah, a coaching opportunity, a reminder that we need to do some things differently. People have really responded well to that when we've talked to them about it. And I'm not familiar with any person who's done it a second time, you know, after that. You know, we don't want to necessarily, you know, call a staff meeting and say, well, we won't do this, that this teacher made a mistake.
Of course not. No.
But certainly examples can be shared, just like the examples in this particular meeting, and those can be really valuable. I remember once in a different school district, there was a teacher who brought a political sign. You know, he took it from one car, was going to take it to another car, left it in his room, you know, but it was showing his political advocacy. And so I talked to him, we wrote a policy in the employee handbook to address it, and then we brought it up at a staff training, you know, the next year. So it's those kinds of things that you brought up that we have to be on it, you know, from as soon as they arise.
You may read into the pronouns.
Well, he and I have discussed the pronouns and,
So what's the response?
you explained it to me that,
What's the response with pronouns then? Because that's been a concern that's been brought up numerous times.
Does that have to do with neutrality, or is it kind of shifting to a different?
Well, neutrality.
that would be not pushing in the
That would not,
political
that would be
advocacy.
pronouns would be.
Yeah, right now, if there are, by the way, I'm reviewing our current procedure as far as personal pronouns with the attorney. I just sent some information to her last week, I think, to get additional clarification. But right now, our current policy is that if a parent puts in a written request to the school district to change the personal pronoun of their child, that we go through a process that involves Vanessa changing it or adding it as a profile to the student's record. And so in those cases, though, it's parent driven. Now, there are also students who approach teachers and others, their friends and the classrooms, and they want to change it without going through that process. And that's the part that I'm checking with the attorney. I personally believe it's better to make sure that parents have access to that information. I don't want to hide anything from parents, but before stating that, I want to make sure the attorney agrees with that. So that's been our policy actually for several years. Predates me, so it's probably 4 or 5 years old.
And I'm guessing that would be 17 and under. If you're 18, then they would be,
They can do it themselves.
so that's clarified. I think I'm fine with between a parent and teacher. I think what they do in some districts and what I've heard we're not doing here is when the teacher stands up and pushes it in front of a whole classroom of, and that's what my concern was, because they do that in many districts in this state. And my whole thing was that's personal and that needs to stay between the student and the teacher. I'm fine with whatever they decide to do, but we're not going to push a teacher standing in front of the classroom and ask if students have, which they do in the district south of us.
I'm glad you brought that.
That was my concern.
Yeah.
Isn't what parents do
I'll
personally.
give you an example with one of my sons, who goes to Carleton College.
Mhm.
And during orientation, I don't think the kids were there, but parents were there. And each person introduced themselves, their names and their personal pronouns. And, if I were like a 16-year-old child, in that room, then I'd feel pressure to share the same information. And that part I feel uncomfortable about, because some people don't want to share that information in front of others. So, but those are kind of some of the questions that I pose to our attorney, just to make sure that we're on solid footing. Now, with all that being said, I think there'll be some changes starting in January. So I'm not going to slow down the review, but I think in January, February, there'll probably be some federal changes. And so then we'll adjust our policy accordingly. So I'm not trying to minimize the concern, but I do think there's some changes coming.
I do too.
Yeah. So,
I would also remind the board, we want to go back to your journal that you get from SBA. Go back into your journal, go back into the May issue here, the May-June issue of 2024 here, page 20, and look up and read what Mankato's doing to take care of their marginalized students down there to support those students who need help. Great article in your magazine here from SBA. Really helps you out understand what schools are doing to take care of those kids. And you got a hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I agree with everything that Pam said, and she said a lot of what I was thinking and gonna share, but I think it's really important that we provide guidelines for the staff and the students, so everybody knows and what the ramifications are if you go one way or the other. I just think those guidelines are really, really important in having this conversation. In an effort to create those guidelines, I think is really, really important. So getting more granular on what this looks like, neutral, the definition, things like that are really important going forward.
yeah, we had a good discussion about that. I think the goal is to just share expectations. We can't anticipate every single circumstance that might come up, but at least we can do our best to set our expectations accordingly.
And also, as myself, being in the schools for 12 years, I've never seen a teacher or an EA or a cook or a bus driver or a maintenance person wear any t-shirts for political reasons. Kids, t-shirts, hats, you see it all. I've seen them both for 12 years, middle school and high school. But I've never, ever seen a teacher or a staff member wear something. Now, could it happen one time and it gets corrected? That could happen. But I've never heard of it, and I've never seen it in my 12 years of being in school. I asked my wife about it. She's been there 27 years. She's never, ever seen a staff member wear a political t-shirt, ever. But kids, they do all the time. Yeah, maybe they bug me about it, and we have to stay neutral when they talk to you about it. It's just the way it is. We have still a teacher or a staff member. So, okay, any other further discussion, questions on neutrality?
So,
Yes, ma'am.
so what is the best way forward, just to continue what we do and to know that is some of this gonna be written up in a handbook, or I'm just wondering, because we're
What's
having
the
a great
action?
discussion.
What's the action?
We're not taking action tonight, but is there action? And when I ask this question, it isn't that people say, well, you need to trust the staff. Well, this is about having expectations and knowing, and so that the staff is aware of the expectations. And I would say this is a good thing, because your best teachers, and usually the teachers that I grew up with, now I graduated a number of years ago, but you never knew where your teachers stood politically, and those are your best teachers. Those are, where those kids walk out and they say, I think he's a Democrat. And the next one says, no, he's a Republican. No, the kids don't know. There are many teachers and most of our colleges, they know exactly where they stand. And it's too bad because that isn't the way it should be, so.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think the best spot is to include it. I shouldn't say staff handbook because that's in Brandon's area. I'm setting up district protocols or standard operating procedures. And that would be given to all employees, and that's, I think, a really good spot for it. And, so that would be in place for next year, which is probably better because I think there will be changes coming out from the federal level. And so we can kind of see how that shakes out and then make sure those are incorporated in it as well.
Perfect.
So I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm kicking the can down the road. But I want to go through the legal review first, make sure that's set, and then we'll make adjustments.
Okay.
So I want to make another thing that I observed and heard from students' mouths is, they understand, when they were talking about, and this was in the student union, that Nate and I attended that meeting.
Yeah,
The
multicultural student.
multicultural. And, we were talking about, the harassment, the racial slurs and the things that were going on in the school. We were listening to them talking about all those things and very empathetic around why that's still going on and what are we doing about it and why aren't we nipping it in the bud right away in the classroom when it's happening, those kinds of things. We had a really great discussion going on. The interesting thing that came out though was that the student that was advocating so strongly for all this said, well, I understand that we're in a conservative community, so I understand change takes a long time. So she was basically saying that because we're in a conservative community, that all these things are happening. And I know you guys can't fix this real quickly because we're in a conservative community. I don't know where those ideas come from, that we're a conservative community and that because we're conservative, we allow harassment and racial slurs and all these things. But those kinds of discussions in that type of a environment, in that multicultural, can feed on itself, and where does that come from? I don't get that. That was very disturbing to me, and there was no refuting of it. There was kind of an affirmation of that student and how she felt about that, kind of an agreement that, yeah, it's tough to change things here. That was very disturbing to me, and I know I had a conversation with you on the parking lot, but I don't know if you remember it, but
I remember that meeting real well, and the part that I remember the most, I think it was the three of you.
yeah.
Pam, Nat.
No, that was just Nate and I.
Okay, Pam and Nate and I, maybe Ms.
Yeah,
Johnson was
that was
there.
it.
And of course, the most heartbreaking part of that conversation is how many times she was called the N-word
Right,
on a typical day.
yeah.
And that's what I took from that meeting, that we need to address this
Correct.
somehow, some way.
Right.
And I don't know, how she came up with those perceptions of conservative or liberal, but I do know that both of you, and I, were appalled by what was happening to her. And if you're conservative or liberal or libertarian, we were appalled. And that's what I took from it.
Yeah. And I don't know, I guess, and maybe we're going off subject now a little bit with that, but I felt that was another kind of a red flag, and what are we teaching these kids is based on the things that I was hearing, and hearing, these videos that I've seen and these reports I'm hearing from parents on assignments and things like that. Just leads me down that same path, saying we have some correction to be doing, and I don't know why we're so far one way or the other. We should be right down the middle and not worry about these things. So those are my concerns.
And you had a question, you got 2 minutes left for discussion.
Is it possible to get regular reports back on how this topic is progressing through the channels? Because you said you're reviewing it, you're talking with legal, we're looking at different things. Can we get updates to know so that we can track where we're at and keep on top of it?
Yep, you bet. Yeah, I don't think it'd be every meeting, but at least regular updates. You bet.
Maybe to put,
Anybody?
maybe to put a note in, sometime next spring, early summer, so that it could be in place by fall, because you said you'd want it possibly in, so possibly spring sometime, to have it in the back of your mind, probably you two, because depending on, we don't know who board chair will be. So to make a note of it so that it automatically comes up for discussion and so that we stay on track and.
Yeah, I just wrote early spring.
Perfect,
Because
yeah,
I think
yeah.
we'll have information, as long as we all know that it's gonna be subject to change just
Mhm.
because of, state and national
Yep.
changes, but, I can certainly give you updates on that. Or the community, the school board and community updates.
All right, we'll move on then. Thank you very much. Next up will be 5.2 admin report, Mr. Superintendent.
Oh, yeah, the admin report. By the way, I have a cough and sore throat, so I apologize for my raspy voice. Want to highlight a couple of things. Jake already talked about the Veterans Day programming, which the programs are exceptional, and I'm proud of our students and staff for their participation. Mike Starr and I were Shark Tank investors at the middle school last week, along with Stacy Piker and Ida Critchley. Joe Burrell, the industrial tech teacher, runs this each semester, and the kids, come in as if they're asking for investments into the products that they do. They have a full-blown presentation. They actually create something with the 3D printer that they think would sell, and then we have a good conversation. I'm always really impressed with what those 8th graders can do. And it shows some innovative programming where you involve not only using software and creating a 3D print, but collaborative work, design work, presentation skills, speaking to complete strangers. So I really enjoyed that. Also, I went to Treasure Island play last week, and I say this every time I go, but I'll tell you what, Mo has an unbelievably great program, and we should all be proud of that. And so that was enjoyable. I did give a status of some challenge library materials. One has to do with Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which is currently in the high school media center. The next one is Out of Darkness, and the review committee is going to have a meeting on December 3rd to discuss that. That's all kind of pending what happens tonight, because if we change the policy, then that might change the, kind of how it's going to go forward. So it's kind of tentative.
So Me, Earl, and Dying Girl, can you tell us what the complaint was on that? I don't know that book. Can you tell us what the complaint was on that? What was the challenge?
On both of them, it has to do with sexual explicit content.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yeah, on both of those.
Okay.
I hope that's a fair thing to say.
Yeah, okay. So, and the committee said, no, we want to keep it.
That's their recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah. But then the
other one's
person
still
who filed can still file an appeal. That go to me. I'll look to see if the process was followed, and I think that could be a quick turnaround time, and then the person could appeal it to the full school board.
So they have to appeal it each time?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The next part, oh, by the way, there was a third book that had been challenged, but it turns out the individual did have a child in school at that time. So right now it's not on the challenge list, but I'm sure somebody else will probably pick it up and challenge it. So I don't remember the name of the book offhand. So at one time.
So they're no longer, the child is graduated, or what happened?
Yeah, it just doesn't have a child in school. I can't remember if it was a preschool child, or maybe they went to a different school. I can't remember the details. I did include some discipline data on the next table there. And I'm hoping to do that probably every month or every other month, but I'll show the data month by month so we can kind of compare from one year to the next. So it's a little hard to read, but you see the first 3 columns are 2003 data, and the next 3 columns are 2004 data. And you see that we are making steady progress in lowering how many discipline incidents we've encountered.
So the September to October, why the big jump? I mean, we went from 231 in majors to 433 and 59, or excuse me, minors, and majors went from 59 to 159.
Yeah, and that's a pattern that we've seen both years. And I remember when I was a high school principal, I always felt like there was a quote-unquote honeymoon period for the first part of school. People were outside, they're moving around.
It's not a data lag then? It's not a data lag?
No,
Okay,
no.
it's just,
There may be some discipline incidents that were entered in October, but certainly would explain, the significant increase.
so does this include like the harassments and those things, all those things that the students put in and?
Yeah, minors and majors. Yeah, and so we do want to track it month by month.
And that,
I'm gonna go back to the, challenge library materials. So me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, we've decided as an admin to keep that book in the libraries.
Oh, the first step to a challenge is the complainant will talk to the high school, the principal, or the licensed media specialist. Now we have a licensed media specialist, so we're going to try to encourage people to talk to her, right away. And it's sort of an informal request to remove the material. If the media specialist says no to that, then the individual can fill out a formal complaint request, and then they send it to me, and then the review committee meets to discuss the book. And the review committee, it's not required, decided to actually read the book. And then they used they looked at some criteria to determine if they thought it should remain in the library. And so in that particular case, they recommend keeping it in the library.
So what grade level or what school is it in? The St. Francis High School Media Center?
Correct.
Okay. So what's the process now that it's gone through and we've decided to keep it in there? What is the process? Can they challenge that or appeal that and bring that here?
Yeah, they appeal it to me next. After the review committee has reviewed it, then the appeal goes to me. What I'll typically do is I'll make sure that the process was followed appropriately. I also tend to look at the age range or the grade range that's recommended by the different entities that are reviewed. And if it's not matching that grade range, then I'll ask some really hard questions about why it's still in the library. But if those two things are satisfactory, then I would deny it. And then the person can immediately appeal it to the school board.
And how does that work? So you deny it and you say, fill out this paperwork, we'll get it on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
Well, it kind of depends on the book policy today. But right now with the current policy, I would take just an email saying, hey, I want to appeal it to the full school board. And then we would put it on the agenda for a school board meeting. One issue we'd have to decide is, do board members want time to read the book themselves, or do they want to, wait or just review the different materials, like publisher reviews and those kinds of things. So that's the part that's a little murky. One issue that I'm sure will come up in 606.5 would be, do we want a public hearing or not about the book? So that's one thing we should decide today. We're with the public comment, but would we want a formal public hearing?
any further discussion? Amy?
I can wait until we're going over the policy, but I looked it up on BookBooks, and it's a 3 out of a 5, it's minor restricted.
Minor restricted.
Yeah, so. And it says the summary of concerns is this book contains inexplicit sexual nudity, sexual activities, excessive frequent profanity, and derogatory terms. And what I like about BookBooks is that it actually tells you the page where the so-called, I don't know if you want to call it violation or whatever occurs. And it also has on the bottom or on the top, it actually has the words that are in there and how many times they're used, so.
It prints out the passages.
It'll say how many times dick is, cock, bitch, ass, the F word, goddamn. I mean, there's a list of words and how many times they're actually listed in the book, so.
And our committee said they think that it's fine to leave it, so.
Okay, any other discussion right now? All right, we're moving into action items. We move 6.7 up on top. It's the book policy. I'm not going to ask for a motion in a second. We're going to have discussion. That way we're going to prevent all these last time go around admin this or inject this or I want to amend that. We have discussion, 30-minute discussion. Then I'm gonna call for a motion in a second. Okay, by then, we're gonna know how we wanna word this thing and put this together. That way there's no all the big changes, so we can do it outside of a motion in a second. More comfortable reading and talking about it. Brandon's gonna talk about it. We sent all the paperwork to the attorney. You've seen what would happen with the attorney's, recommendations. And we're gonna go across that right now tonight, all these different codes that's in your book policy. So we got 30 minutes, Mr. Brandon, go ahead.
All right, good evening. What was brought before you is an attempt to follow the board direction from the last meeting. And so there is a red line document in your board packet that has V3 at the end for version 3. And it includes all of the red line changes that were presented in the previous meeting. But then it added the direction from the board, that is all clearly indicated by highlighted in yellow text. So if it's highlighted in yellow, that is adding what was given as far as direction at the last meeting. So we listened to the recording many times to make sure we got it right. And so if you look at page 3 of that red line, there was adding some definitions. And that's highlighted in yellow. And then on page 4 and 5, there was changes made. Page 5 adding 2 community members, and then page 4 added that a community member could bring an objection. So that is what we understand was the direction of the board. So that document ending in V3 is the one in front of you. That was presented to the school district attorney for a legal review, and if you look in the background information, the legal response is part of the background. It speaks to the attorney's opinion about adding the definitions to the third page of that document, or part 5.7. And then the other 2 changes that are highlighted in yellow are permissible. There wasn't any legal concern to those. Then the superintendent already spoke to the public hearing. We wanted to clarify in there. I think there was some discussion at the last meeting about the public hearing. It is not required. The appeal process first goes to the superintendent, then goes to the school board, but it is not required to be a public hearing. If it is, there is a policy that we have in place that would need to be followed. So that is just one thing we wanted to clarify this evening. So hopefully we framed everything up as directed from the board so that you can start your discussion.
Okay. So questions right now, let's open it up for discussion. What questions do you have? What do you understand, not understand? What can be drawn out of here? It needs to be withdrawn and changed. What do you have for comments? Questions? Ms. Pam?
Okay, so the thing that we were, at this point, were really adamant against was the explicitly sexual content and the explicitly violent content. I mean, the books that talk about how to perform abortions, how to give yourself an abortion, the molestation, the men on little girls, having sex with them against their will, all these things are in these books very explicitly. So when I read this, So the legal review, part 5.7, including these provisions would place content-based restrictions on library materials, which in most cases is not permissible under the First Amendment. To comply with the First Amendment and Minnesota statute, any restrictions on library materials in this policy should avoid broad categorical prohibitions that could be perceived as prohibiting materials based solely on the nature of their content. Okay, so that's a little disturbing to me because because we specifically said sexually explicit. We said that it's inappropriate for our students. This is, to me, content-based restriction. So that says, well, then anything is open. This to me felt like a response to a public library, not a school library. I don't know how the rest of you guys felt about that statement. To me, so we can't restrict any content-based restrictions.
Yeah, again, Brandon.
Brandon, can you help?
You may want to jump in, Brandon, and explain why the law.
Content-based, so.
So this policy that's coming before you,
Right.
ending in B3 was sent to the attorney, the exact policy.
Right.
So this is the response to that highlighted yellow parts, and the concern is that inserting that would could potentially bring a challenge of the First Amendment. And I'm not an attorney. A lot of this is case law from, I think, up to the Supreme Court, and it's that you cannot look at certain parts. It has to be as a whole. It has to be objective as a whole, and that's these definitions are not doing that from a legal standpoint.
Okay, so then the next paragraph.
Let's make sure now, when we address Brandon or somebody, just ask, talk, we recognize who's talking here, what time frame. Anyone before Pam? Anyone else right now have a question yet? Discussion? Okay, Pam, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to just kind of continue on the thought process then. So then they say, so we therefore, part of this is for our audience so they understand what's being said because they haven't necessarily seen this, but I want to spell it out because I want to understand it myself. We therefore recommend omitting this portion of the policy and instead focusing on the educational value and age appropriateness of library materials. Okay, so that's what we said to start with was the age appropriateness, so I'm in agreement with that, and the educational value. So I think that's what one of our visitors was talking about, what's the value in this, and we don't really want our kids reading this kind of material because it could lead them down a really terrible path. So those provisions already provide grounds for excluding sexually explicit content on a case-by-case basis that is not suitable for a student audience. Okay, so if this is the case, so that approach would align. So this is saying that the current, I think, this is saying that the current policy accomplishes this. Does it not? Is that what this is saying? We recommend omitting this portion and instead focusing on the educational value and age appropriateness of library materials. Isn't that already in our policy? Didn't we already talk? Isn't that already in that?
Right, I don't have the background in front of me, but isn't that referring to like part 5A 1 through 6? Is that part of that?
What does it say? Because I'm trying to go back and forth. I wish I had printed out.
I think there's more to that background that maybe you're not reading, that it's referring to, that's in the policy.
I wish I had it in front of me, sorry. I wish I had it.
We're talking 5A, B, C. Is that what
Right.
So if I might.
Go ahead, yeah.
If I might read them. So 5A is artistic quality or I gotta make this a little bigger for my old eyes, just a minute here.
You got 6 items there.
Yeah, I'll read them here. All right, now I can read them. Sorry, guys.
Oh, I see it, number 5.
You see it? Yeah, 5A.
Is that what you're talking about then? Okay, so, all right, so to answer that then, they're saying it's already in here because it's library materials shall meet high standards of quality in one or more of these categories. artistic quality or literary style, authenticity, critical thinking, educational significance, factual content, high interest for intended audience, and readability. Okay, then my question is this. Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, who has very explicit, it's not recommended for minors, which is anybody under 18. It just passed the committee. The committee said, no, we should keep it in there. And this is our current policy. It's already in our current policy, so it didn't catch this book. So we're missing our whole community's concern with we're not catching these books and keeping them up or taking them back out, because this is already in place. So that's my concern. We've already had it tested and it failed to our community standards, but passed to this, which our legal advice is saying, you already got it covered. It's not, if it's age appropriate. We don't think it is age appropriate. So it's subjective. So we're stuck.
It is subjective, but I will point out that there are multiple other reviews by, sources that do show that it's appropriate for high school kids.
Yes, and we've had that discussion.
Right.
But
So
the
it's not
problem
just
is,
the book links.
the problem is what we're trying to avoid here at this board, and with our community support, because I believe everybody here is against the books that are currently in the library. So what we're saying then is it doesn't matter that this meets the criteria of high standards for our students to be reading because it's readable or because it either has educational significance or high interest for intended audience. So if we have students that have high interest in reading these kinds of books, it passes the grade of a high standard. It's not good enough. That's what we're trying to say here. So it's really missing because this to me is so subjective. We've already done the test and it passed the test of the policy, yet we have community members and half the board here who says it's not okay for these, they're not age appropriate, so that's what I have to say.
And that's why we don't go, a policy like this one that you just said, Pam, is going to be very, very subjective. What one person sees versus somebody else sees it. There's 8 different companies out there you take that book to. There's 8 that I know of. They have a review on the book. Which of these support it, which don't support it? We have 9, 10, 12, 15 of them? I don't know. I'm up to 8 right now that I found on book reviews. So it's all going to be subjective of what's good, what's bad. Fact it is, we're bringing something together here, and the legal beagle told us some of this stuff's going to get you in trouble, and there's already lawsuits out there against school districts for pulling books out.
Who's got a
So all
lawsuit?
we're trying to do is protect ourselves.
Who's got one?
Who's got what, lawsuits?
Who's got a lawsuit?
Florida.
And what book?
I have no idea. They just said there's lawsuits down there for pulling books off the library. So again, it's subjective, but what do we do to protect the district not to get hit by a lawsuit? Mr. or Mrs. Attorney, what do you say? They gave us what they say, recommendations come from administration. I am not going to override the attorney or both because we asked for their expert, help us out. We don't get sued. And so that's where I come from. If she says take it out, keep it, I follow the expert. I'm not going to argue with the lawyer until I get my law degree, then I'll argue with her. So that's where I come from on the whole system. You say that?
I guess that's interesting, an interesting perspective, because again, we go back to a lot of our stakeholders don't like the stuff in the libraries, and then we're saying, but we have a policy. This book got through, so it's okay, but we want to get a levy, so give us money. But we don't want to hear from you because our attorney said not to do this. It's not all clicking. If it were up to me, I'd say let's go ahead and take it just as it's written here to include number 7. That's all highlighted in yellow, because that's where it drills down and takes out the question and subjectiveness. This is where it's at.
You asked about the lawsuit in Florida, okay? A group of major publishers, authors, and parents have sued Florida educational officials over law that allows parents and local residents to limit what books are available in school libraries if they expect or describe sexual contact. The lawsuit filed by all these big companies here alleged that the state law enacted last year brought about hundreds of book removals and violating the First Amendment right to free speech. What I find offensive, she may not find. She finds it offensive, I don't find it offensive. That's a subjective of what we're seeing here in our policy. And that's why these lawsuits are coming out right now, because it comes down to the First Amendment. We may not agree, we may not like what's in there, how it's written, I agree. Should kids see it? But some of these books haven't been checked out for 10 years. When I asked some of the library specialists, when is that book out last? He looks it up, oh, that was 7 years ago, someone looked at it. 7 years ago, one person looked at a book 7 years ago. So again, it's raw material, I agree, yet First Amendment right is going to override you. And I just don't want to get our district in a lawsuit. Jill had a hand up first, and I come back to Amy. Jill?
When one of us becomes an attorney, we have the right to make a decision in this as a board and have legal guidance at this table. We currently don't, and I will not vote for something that goes against what our attorneys tell us. And if you want to vote against that, many of us probably should resign from this board, because if you're going to get us in a lawsuit, I'm not going to be part of those meetings.
And again, I went to a workshop last year put on by an attorney through MSBA, and they talked about it right here, about censorship and the First Amendment. And I went to this training back in August 7th, 2023, about what's going on. They have a whole bunch of stuff listed inside here. But one best thing I picked up out of the whole conference for that one day is what Sandra Day O'Connell stated when she was on the Supreme Court. Our obligation is to define the liberty of all, not to mandate our own moral code. And she was on the Supreme Court for many, many years. We don't take on moral code. And that's what she had a good statement about it. And it was a good attorney, a good process I went through with this whole process, the workshop. And it keeps coming back, the First Amendment. We may not like the discussion, we may not like the wording, we don't like the content in the book, yet the First Amendment is going to override it. And these lawsuits are happening already. And Florida is one of them. I'm sure there's many more out there. Amy had a hand up also. Amy?
Yeah, question again. Who's suing the state of Florida?
Pardon?
Who is suing the state of Florida? You said, who was it, parents and was it?
It was a group of major publishers. And
Yeah, so,
publishers.
okay, I'll stop you right there.
Okay,
So, I got the floor.
It's publishers, it's parents, and authors. The publishers, the authors.
I'm
and the
sure
parents. They're the ones
I'm sure there's a group of publishers that are publishing the
suing.
book that came up in here, and they're suing that we want to put these in the schools for these children to read, okay? We'll see what happens down there, but I'm gonna tell you something. Do I need to read again what 7A states?
We agree
It
on
is
that.
sexual explicit.
We agree.
So my job as a school board member is to approve policy for educational purposes for the school, for the students of District 15, okay? If it has educational purpose, I'm all for it. I don't know why we've spent all this time. Figure out a way, maybe the attorney needs to write something up, then that's legal, or maybe we need to contact, Upper Midwest Law, and we'll have them write us up one. They're attorneys. I bet they disagree with this. I just have a hunch they might.
And who's
But I'm
gonna
fine.
pay- If you go to another law firm, who's gonna pay for that?
They do a lot of it pro bono, but I'll find out.
Okay. Please
Because
do.
I've been in contact, they wrote us a policy or one about 4 or 5 years back to keep the CRT out of the schools.
And that's why.
And they've sued and they've won in the state.
That's why you end up in court, that I've been in court many, many times in my past, my old job. And you have a court, and you have two different attorneys up there, the defense and the county attorney.
They just-
And you have a jury of 12 sitting over here, both sides give their information, jury tells which one is right, which is wrong. They make a decision, then we move on. So I agree, it's very subjective. Do you want to put this school district in a possible lawsuit on First Amendment? When our attorney that we have retained for years is telling us Don't do that. Don't put it in there. That's what I'm trying to get to you. Yes, ma'am.
So if we were to take it out, and I can read it again, what I want out, which is pretty, an act of explicit sexual intercourse, normal and perverted, actual or simulated, including genital to genital, anal to genital, oral to genital, intercourse, but whether between humans, beings, or between human beings and an animal. That's what we're trying to keep out here. Let's just say it out loud. Okay, this isn't about free speech. And I don't know why let's figure out how to get these books out of our library. It shouldn't be this hard. If you want, I'm fine with removing this language, but only if we can add book looks in. Then we'll use book looks as the deciding factor, which then showed up that it was minor restricted. We use this to show movies. If a movie's R-rated, we don't show it in the schools. If it shows up to be G, we can show it in the schools. But this, it has a rating system, and I'm fine with removing this language as long as we put on book looks then in the policy that will guide our staff into making decisions. So I'm fine with, then the attorney will be happy, and we're using book looks, and we can move forward.
And again, based on, come back to Nate here, and again, based on the training from the attorneys that I went through from an SBA training here that day, within the contents of the First Amendment, censorship is the government restrictions on free speech. This extends to written materials such as books. We agree that some of the stuff written is not the best, yet are we, it's the First Amendment. Why violate the First Amendment? You all know what could happen on it, Mr. Nate.
So in preparation for tonight's discussion, I did my research just like all of you did your research. I talked to some of our staff, looked at some of the things and the procedures that we do, and I wrote just a quick statement because I want to be able to hit the points, and it actually hits everything that we've talked tonight. So I'm just going to read that quickly. But first off, from my knowledge and understanding, we have no issues within our school district of students being forced to read or participate in discussions related to the books in question or books that have been referenced. I think Superintendent has already told us that. You probably can attest to that as well. The inclusion of number 7 under selection of library materials should not be included in this policy. And I'm going to give you my justification as to why. I believe it is too broad of a statement. These descriptions should be part of a procedure that is followed by the review committee as criteria used in making a decision to restrict or remove a material. Instead, I offer to be part of this policy, which is already covered in state and federal law. Library materials shall not include pornographic depictions. We know what the definition of pornographic is. That's a state definition that's in law. Hear me out. Talking excerpts of books paints at times the wrong picture. The truth is, yes, these books in question talk about sex or explicit sexual acts, but not everything sexual is inherently pornographic or obscene. Sexual health and educational books, descriptions of Holocaust atrocities, books on child abuse and sex trafficking, and others serve as educational or serve an educational purpose. Maybe not to you or me at times, but who is to say it doesn't serve a purpose for students in our district that have been raped, forced into sexual trafficking, or a victim of child abuse? Why would we put something into policy that diminishes students' autonomy and puts up barriers to things like sexual health information? Books addressing abuse or injustices provide valuable opportunity for high school age students to identify what harm looks like and have conversations around safety, consent, and injustice. And at times, under the guidance of a trained educator, librarians, or even family members, if the student chooses to bring the book home. Isn't this empowering our students and allowing an environment for freedom of thought? Some of the books in question mirror experiences some of our young people have had or are having. That is a true statement. That is an ugly truth. We have students that have or are going through some horrific things. I believe this is where we as a school board can take positive action. but rather we spend time identifying these experiences as inappropriate or removing them and are invalidating the youth who have lived through them, while also depriving them of information that might help them overcome situations and even process their own realities. Again, when we look at an excerpt out of a book instead of the entire book and what it is talking, shouldn't we as in district ensure we have library materials that represent all within the district, not just those that we feel should be represented? Isn't that the beauty of a public education? We as a school board need to recognize that we have a community with a wide range of values and beliefs. There are members in our community that don't agree with my values and beliefs or yours. We must refer to our experts. We can use experts in helping our committee make decisions as well. Again, there's a long list of different types of rating sites that we can use that I think are included in the procedure. We've talked about expanding that procedure as well. We can continue to be transparent with what we require our students to read or participate in. We can be proactive in sending reading lists out early, and we can show the connection and educational benefit of that so parents can make decisions for their child. We can hold our administrators accountable to making sure everything we do in the classroom has the value intended for our students. We should encourage students to have the option to read books they enjoy, even if they cover difficult topics. We should ensure we offer books and opportunities to help students understand our world and become citizens in our diverse society. We should not restrict information or discourage free thought. That goes against the primary function of education, which is to teach students how to think for themselves. We should not restrict student exposure to different perspectives and experiences, even if we personally don't agree with them or are fearful of them. All of this exposure helps our students develop empathy and understandings. Books can open a world to someone. We should not make a policy that limits that opportunity. We should ensure we have a policy that allows for a detailed look into the appropriateness of an entire piece of material for our students, which is what 606.5 does, without the inclusion of number 7. The role of parents and guardians is to make those decisions of our students, the parents and guardians of our students, and that should remain with them, not the board. Again, my belief in how this policy is written is Amy, I understand what you're saying, and hey, we're talking about this book and this event that it describes, right? But when we put number 7, it talks about all of those areas. It says we shall not have that. So we have to remove things that include any of that. And that is not an interpretation that we are making at the board level. It specifically states what it cannot have in there. And there are very educational books that have examples of this. There's a couple of sporting books. It talks about touching the buttocks. There's books that talk about a player or a coach giving a good game on the backside of a player. If we put this in our policy, it specifically needs to come out, right? It is so descriptive and broad in what it does.
That's not sexually explicit.
Stand by. Nathan, for.
So, I don't believe it should be in there. Again, I think our attorney is spot on. We have an attorney for a reason. We're asking them to support our policies. That's my specific comment on the number 7 piece.
Did Joe hand up and then come back to that, Joe?
So I completely concur with Nate on his assessment. Great presentation of looking at this from all perspectives, not just your own perspective. Secondarily, you want to talk about books. I know I brought it up at the last meeting. The first book I would challenge, or find somebody to challenge for me, is the Bible, because that would be rejected based on this. We could go to Kill a Mockingbird next. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We have to look at it for the entire content and ensure that we're representing all. And it feels very close-minded, the discussion here at this table. And last week, and the week before that, and the month before that. Just the entire conversation about this topic.
And that, hand up.
I think we need to remember that we're talking about library books where our students have access to these books without their parents. And what they can, that's all I want to say. They have no access, their parents aren't there to tell them this is probably not the right book for you. They have access to these books because we put them there.
Amy had a hand up earlier.
Oh, and describing a coach putting his hand and saying good job to a player, to sexually explicit rape of a student, I find very offensive. To think that our staff can't figure out the difference. This isn't closed-minded. This is ensuring that taxpayer-funded, and I'll say it again, taxpayer-funded library materials, that they don't want this garbage in the schools. This is paid for by the taxpayers. They fund this district. And how we can't figure out to get, we're not showing R-rated movies. We're not showing even PG-13 to the elementary kids. It's a rating system. I'm fine with taking 7 out, but then I want book looks put in and a replace. And let's have the attorney look at that. And I'll end the conversation.
Clarify, when you say booklet, what do you mean by?
Book looks.
Oh, book,
Book looks.
one of the companies.
Yep, so we'll put it in the policy that that's the one they use to determine whether or not it stays in, because that's the one that,
And that rating system.
then that rating system. It's very similar to the movies. We use those to show movies in the school. This will be the same thing, it'll just be with the books.
You had a hand up first and then Pam, hey? Okay. Nothing? Okay, Pam?
I find it very offensive also, some of the statements, and very insensitive. From an educator, we're not talking about a classroom discussion here about molestation or
Curriculum.
abuse. We're not talking curriculum here, we're talking about these individuals have free access to these books. If the one student that checked out that book 7 years ago, I don't know where that student is right now, but they may be down a pretty dark, deep dive, terrible path right now because of the book they read. I don't know. But that's, if anybody does any kind of research on what this kind of material does to your mind and does to addiction and going down this path and continuing to go down this path, you need to read on it. You need to understand the psychological effects of and I don't know if it's just a woman thing or if it's a man thing also, but I know as a woman, and I read some of these things and some of these things that are being done to little girls and to girls that are in high school by other students, it's horrible. It's violent. It would make girls be scared to walk out in the dark. They'd be scared of, I mean, I don't know where you guys are coming from thinking that this is all okay, but this audience here, the majority of them that I know, most of them, they don't think this is okay. And our moral values in this community are not where we're talking here in this material. These specific books, we have not called out the books that are just kind of, an experiential thing. We're talking about books that are vulgar, violent, sexual acts being done on children against their wills. They're being drugged. I mean, if we can't even read them at this board table, how can we expect them to be in our libraries? So what I'm saying is, okay, then if we can't do this because we're afraid of a lawsuit, we better get some caged in area and a glass wall and a lock. And if any student wants any of these books, then you can put Penthouse in there if you want. If any students want these books, their parent has to be there and say, yes, you can take that book out. Because their parent is then going to know that this wall of books is obscene, okay? They're not obscene, I can't use that word, right? But they're sexually explicit. And the parents would then know. Right now, the parents don't know. A child comes home with a book from Pequot, or whatever her name is, the author, who I know has been on social media now saying, gee, why are my books being kicked out of the schools? Because she's losing money, okay? But it's called 19 Minutes. How is a parent supposed to know that 19 minutes, what's in there? How is a student supposed to know? You pick this book up and you read it, oh, this is about this. And then you start getting into the pages and all of a sudden you're into very explicit sexual conduct. Step by step by step. I don't know, I'm good to go with it like it is and let the community decide that this is okay. We'll see what happens in Florida, because it's publishers that are pushing back now, and I truly believe.
Publishers and parents.
I don't know, maybe the parents are publishing a book. I mean, I know how we use that here in the school. We say, well, I'm a parent, but I'm also a teacher, or I'm a parent, I'm also a publisher. So you can be both, okay?
Final comment,
But anyway, the point is our taxpayers are paying for these books. They don't want them in there. They don't want them in their child's book bag. We don't want to be read in the school bus out loud to each other. We have children who have been molested and do have dealt with sexual abuse and all kinds of things. And if another student all of a sudden starts reading about it and laughing about it and carrying on, you can't control it.
Okay, so move on here, a lot of discussion. Some of you say yes, take out 7, some say keep 7. So for discussion, where are you at with it? Because I want to get moving here. We can talk all night. I want to make sure we follow the policy here. What do you think about the booklet here?
I'm okay if we go ahead and put book looks in and take 7 out. But then we need to use book looks first.
One of the resources.
It would be a required resource that our folks have to hit that first, and if it's not in there, and if it's rated 0 to 2, I said it in my last one, I can, we can make copies of this again and put this in the policy. I'm okay with that because that will screen out and it'll use the book rating system that's the same as the movies.
And what's our community special using again?
Claudia.
We use Tidal Wave, like Amazon ratings that, from publishers.
So we're using that. Glenn's going to add in booklets then. You can also look at that.
Oh,
What you're saying?
but I've already added that to the procedure.
Okay.
I added that after the last board meeting, so.
All right.
But I think Pam is asking for something different.
I want this we want this in the policy because the policy is going to dictate that they have to use, before they purchase any further books or approve books into classroom libraries, they have to check book looks first. And if book look says it's 0 to 2, fine, they can order it, they can buy it. If it's 3 to 5, they cannot.
Well, that's booklet. What about the other ones that we're using?
I'm saying this comes first, and after this, if it's not in book looks, then there's probably not an issue that we're gonna object to. Because they're not every book is in book looks. And then they can use the others. So I have wording if you want to put it in there.
Okay, stand by. Go ahead and hand up, and I'll come back to Amy and then Nate, Jill.
So how many review materials did we use in the review of this book? The book that we were talking about, the Earl book? And second of all, do we anywhere else in any of our policies refer to using something such as this, a specific resource? And shouldn't that be in a process, not in a policy, that we're gonna have to ensure that we update regularly when businesses come and go, or change names, or do anything else? Like, do we say we use the Red Cross, or we use X, or we use Y? I don't think we do. I'm pretty sure we say clearly listing any specific business in any policy.
Okay, Amy?
This isn't a business, this is,
And
we're using a service.
I have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
How many resources did we use in the review of this?
When the Tidal Wave was used, and usually they have like 3 to 5. Stacy's pointing out though, there were 8 different services used,
Okay.
including book looks.
Including book looks.
Good. All right. Amy, and then come back to Nate. Amy?
so I'm fine with, the only way I will be fine is to use book looks, and I'm fine with putting it in the policy, because I want to ensure, we already saw what happened. The Earl, me, or whatever book is passed, it's fine. This should be on
But it's minor restricted.
But it's
Minor
minor restricted in book looks.
Minor
So
grade.
why did it pass muster? I'm just curious.
Yeah, the
You know,
other-
that it went through 8 of them, oh, okay, it could go through 20 of them. But it shouldn't, to me, it shouldn't have passed muster. I
Book
can-
looks at one rating and most, if not all the others, had a higher rating that would be okay for high school kids.
Yeah.
So that's why.
What I like about book looks is that it has it has all the infractions, so many times you say, well, the school board can read the whole book. Well, that's gonna take a long time,
Right.
but on book looks, why I like it is that it has the page number and what it says. So for instance, in Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, on page 60, it says, yeah, Earl, I'm going to eat her pussy. Huh? Yeah. Do you even know how to eat pussy? Not really. Papa Gaines never sat you down and son, one day you're gonna have to, eat pussy, the pussy. No, he did not teach me how to eat a butthole. God bless that man. Yup, I would teach you some pussy eating technique, but it's a little complicated. Son, I don't have time for that. I got like 20 pussies over here that I need to eat. Is that right? I'm on a pussy deadline. So do I need to continue?
No, we
Should
understand
I
what you're saying.
continue?
We know what you're saying, Amy.
Okay.
We're saying booklet is one item that can be used along with other ones too.
Yep, and I want it passed muster with these other ones. I
And
don't
again,
think this needs to be for under 18. If you're 18, and when, I hate when people say, oh, you're banning books. No, I'm not. They can go to the public library anytime they want and check out the book. I have my own library card.
He's on the phone too.
And their phone, that's fine, we're not saying they can't. What we need to be careful of is using taxpayer money to buy some of these books that are inappropriate for our students,
Nate, that's-
for minors.
Nate,
So I heard from fellow board members that book looks does not have every book. Okay, there's not a review for every book. So if a book is challenged that is not part of book looks, it automatically is going to pass muster, right? It's automatically gonna pass because it's not in there, so we already stated that that must mean it's okay. But yet, there's a member of our community that wants that book removed. And because the committee said, nope, it's good to go because it's not in book looks, I would caution putting book looks in a policy. I am in support of book looks. I want that to be used. I want that in our procedure along with the 7, 8, 9 other sources that we use. I think it should be used. But again, if we have it as one, what happens when a book that someone wants to be removed is not in book looks? And now the committee used that as one of their criteria and it says it's good to go because it's not in there. That must mean it's right. It's okay. But that book needs to be moved out. Book looks is run by 2 individuals that do not have education in library materials.
You don't need an education to figure out.
But what I'm stating is we have trained individuals that have gone to school that we have hired to look through this process, to use criteria. I want them to use it as a resource, absolutely, but it should not be in a policy that mandating that is what we use. Because again, this LLC, which is a business, was started in 2022. What's to say it goes out of business in January? Okay, it goes out of business in January. Now we have a policy that says we have to use that. Now we go back and we pick another one, and now that one goes out of business. I want the procedure to have the options for our committee to use.
Okay, Amy? Good.
Well, I'm fine with putting 2 of them in there if you want, that way, you know, it has to be book looks and something else, but it passed muster by our professional, educated people that this book is okay.
And it's mine.
Really? Are you kidding me? So you're gonna, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't fly with me. Our educated individuals who work for ISD 15 said this book was okay. I don't believe it is. I believe the majority of our taxpayers will say it's not okay. And I'm not talking about curriculum in a classroom, I'm not talking about the Holocaust, I'm talking about library book materials that are purchased with taxpayer-funded money. Of making sure that ones that come in, we don't end up with any more of this stuff. You know, if parents want their kids to read this, I would think the majority of them don't. But if there are some that want their children to read about this stuff, they can go to the Anoka Public Library, the Rum River Library right down here. They'll have the books on the libraries. So we're not banning them, but we're making sure that we're spending our money on books that, yes, that have an educational value to them.
And again, how this is so subjective, South Carolina, they pulled from the school district down there 95 books off the shelf. They took 95 books out, spent months going through all the books with the committee. They had a committee set up like we have similar to our policy here. After we went through all the books, 5 books were pulled, 90 went back on the shelf. Now, what did they use? I have no idea. They didn't talk about it in the article. What did they use to look at the books? All they said was 5 were pulled, 90 went back on the shelf. So again, very, very subjective here to keep ourselves moving here. Nate, a hand up first, and then we're gonna wrap this up pretty quick. I'm already after my 30 minutes. Nate, you wanna be here until midnight, I'll be here until midnight for you. It doesn't bother me a bit.
It's okay.
But I'm just trying to get through here because we got a lot more stuff on the agenda. You wanna override the attorney? Override the attorney. Nate?
Amy, I have a question for you, and I appreciate this conversation.
Yep.
But you talked about, there's members of our community that do not want that in there, right? We've had members of our community in the past come up during public comment that do want those books. So why is their voice less important than the other voices? Why are they not, if they want those books in our school, they want their students to be able to have access to them, right? Again, these are not on a classroom curriculum, on a classroom read list. We've verified that, we understand that. But there's members of our community that don't agree with us, right? That say, hey, I want that part in there. It is a public institution. They pay their taxes too. And they want those books available for students at appropriate levels, right? Just like we've talked, just like we are trying to rectify with certain books, just like we did with the 4th grade classroom. That had a book that that was brought to our attention, and our administrators and our educated individuals went, yeah, you're right. This is not appropriate for this level. It's appropriate at this level, so we moved it. And we corrected that. So what is your comment back to their voice being heard?
They're welcome to come, just as all these individuals have come to board meetings. Call me up anytime. My phone is out. I got 6 more weeks. Call me up anytime. Let me know which book you're gonna demand that stay on there, and I'll listen. They have every opportunity to come forth as we're discussing it. I haven't heard anybody fight to keep these books on the shelf. Not one. I mean, no one, to my knowledge, we had someone talk about the broad perspective of book banning, one person, but they're welcome to come forth, and these books will come forth to the school board before they're taken off the shelf, to my knowledge. Am I correct? If they continue on, and they're gonna have the opportunity to say, you know, I want this book on, and this is why I want my children to read about it. They'll have the opportunity. I'm not shutting down anybody. I'm saying that some of these are, I can't believe we're having all these discussions about making sure that these vile books aren't in the hands of our students. I can't believe it. It's taking this long.
Okay, so take a look at the policy we have. What's the consensus here? And then we'll go back for a motion and a second, and then the final discussion. Do we have consensus in what you want pulled out of here and added additional information for us? Go ahead, Nate.
I have one question on the other part of that policy. There's 3 changes that we're asking for. I thought we discussed up to 2 community members, to not limit it because if we mandate 2 community members, we all know that doesn't necessarily always get filled, right? There's not always someone that wants to be part of a committee for a certain book. But I thought we talked about up to, that allows that we can have 2 community members, but if there's only one that wants to be involved, it doesn't restrict the committee. If it's a staff member, that does there might be a circumstance where a community member might not be needed because it was a staff member that requested it, it ran through the committee, the superintendent decides if that's a portion, but up to 2 community members. I thought that's what we discussed. I didn't listen back to the recording if that's what the final discussion was.
Yeah,
I did have a question on that piece of it.
lots of discussion items, and so sometimes it was talked about 2 community members, and sometimes it was up to 2 community members. I think the last part of the discussion said 2 community members. So I might be mistaken, but we kind of went back and forth, so, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay, so we're gonna add, make sure we add in the policy 2 community members. Okay, what else? And we're gonna pull 7 out, right? We're gonna pull 7, 5, 7, A, B, C. No, A, B will be pulled out that we're talking about, okay? And we wanna add in, or not add in, booklet, keep it in or out, or use materials that the experts say we should use. So we don't have a company going out of business or whoever they may be. Yes, ma'am?
So I'd like to see booklooks in as a requirement. And I would like to also use the rating as the requirement, because again, as Amy has said, yes, we used booklooks, we looked at it, but we didn't adhere at all to the rating, because the rating was not for minors. So that means 18 and under, or under 18, so it should have been pulled if it was booklooks.
So the booklet can be one of the resources.
No, I would like it to be the first stop. First stop is look at booklooks, and if it's appropriate, shake your head all you want, I'm giving you my
Go
input.
ahead.
So that I want it to be required because I believe in that rating system because it's the movie rating system. It's based on the movie rating system, so I think it's legitimate. The other thing is it was 2 community members. And then the other thing is I believe that these should be open to the public. They should be able to hear the discussions that go on so they understand the books that are being challenged. The other thing I want to make a point to is if we actually pass this policy and booklooks is in it, we pretty much do away with a lot of committee member work because the books shouldn't have to be challenged because if they should just go through booklooks and be decided whether they should be in our library or not. So they shouldn't have to be challenged.
Okay. Comment, Nate?
Takes a lot of work out of the committee.
We just talked about, we had community members that talked about an overarching books, right? So if we add that specifically into the policy, and you just said it, Pam, that's an overarching removal of books. So community members do not have a say. If those get removed, you just said there's no committee work. So how does a community member have a chance to go, no, I really want that book. I'm gonna come and challenge it because we have a removal policy. We don't have an addition. And if we use booklooks and we use that as the gospel, it comes straight out. And you just said that there's no committee work, there's nothing. I am adamantly opposed to that.
So,
Okay, Annie?
so why don't we have it where it is removed, but then it is placed on some type of school board report, so board members are also aware. I think board members need to be aware of what books are being removed and why. So if community members are calling board members, they can say, oh yeah. So it needs to be somehow informed of the board of what those are, which then people who watch the agenda, they can come forth and say, you know what? That should come back in the libraries and this is why. And they'll have that opportunity.
So we're in consensus that, Neil?
So, just thinking about this from the Texas perspective. A federal court of appeals on Wednesday blocked a Texas law that would require ratings from booksellers that deal with school libraries. So if we're gonna require our books to be using ratings, wouldn't we be walking down the same path that Texas has been in, where we're required to use book ratings for our books in the library and now it's being appealed in the courts? I don't know, just thinking.
So,
Their statement was, we agree with the state that it has an interest in protecting children from harmful materials, but neither the state, i.e. the district, nor the public have any interest in enforcing a regulation that violates federal law. what's the number?
Also on in the book in the paper here, Brandon, back on page 5, under Delta, Echo, 2 members of the school district committee with no direct connection. Are we saying that if they're on the board for the review, they have to have connection to the district? Kids in school or something like that, is that what we're saying there? Or how does that read?
Which page?
Page 5,
Page 5.
number 2, Echo, number 8. Does that mean that you have, if you're a community member, you have to have a connection somehow to kids in school or what?
No, it just, you cannot have a direct connection with the request for reconsideration.
Over reconsideration, okay. So is that anything?
So it means if you request a book removed, you can't sit on the committee.
So is she saying keep this or take it out?
She said that's permissible.
That's
It's
permissible.
allowable.
Okay, all right. And then that question?
I make a motion that we approve this policy with the change to eliminate 7, but to include that book looks be a primary, and that we also follow up if it's not in primary, and I don't know how that looks, if it's not in the primary book looks rating, that we follow up with the other, institutions that we're using. That would be that's my motion, so that primary is book looks, we get rid of 7A and B, get rid of 7A and B, include book looks as the primary, and if it's not in book looks, then we follow up with the other, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10, whatever that she's using now.
I second
Okay, discussion, now we're in discussion, Rob.
If we pass that, can we run that by the attorney before it comes into effect?
No, I'll run it by it later.
I would urge having the attorney look at it before we approve something. Yeah, I think we're running into an issue. You're right or wrong, I think we would be approving something that would potentially cause problems.
Amy?
So, I'm confused,
Well, first, we know.
because,
Wait, stand by. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yep.
Okay, just take a vote, we go into discussion, okay? We do not have a motion.
well, no,
No, we have a motion and a second.
We don't have to vote on it.
we don't have to vote on it, because I have a question.
So now's the discussion.
We're still discussing, we can discuss for an hour, I don't want to, but,
Okay, go ahead.
so, I'm confused that you're confused, because we approved a policy that was supposed to do what we wanted it to do last January, February. And now that we're actually, you're telling us that you're using book looks and other rating systems to remove books off there. So what's the deal, that we're putting it in writing? I mean,
A couple
that's-
of things. First of all, there's just one rating system that would be proposed for the policy. That's one issue. The other issue is that the whole policy talks about looking at the whole book, not just the sexual explicitness of the book. We aren't considering the educational value, the artistic value, the readability, or any of those things. And I think that's where we get into a bind. That's where we could be challenged. I don't know if we would be challenged. We're St. Francis. We don't have a newspaper presence in the state. We don't have a lot of people. I don't know what would happen, but I do think if we were challenged, we'd be in a tough spot.
Can I add some more? So I've got further language to address
Stand
that.
by, Amy, have for you. Amy, can you make some comment?
well then, what would you like to see added? Do you want one of the other books so that it isn't just book looks? I want book looks as a primary. If you're fine with adding, what were another one? What was one of the other ones that she used?
I already have that procedure that we would look at multiple groups, including book looks. That is a primary resource. It's in the procedure, not the policy. So I added that 2 weeks ago. But,
So was that part of the decision that was just made at the high school to keep
oh yeah,
Earl book? Okay.
yeah. But and here's the catch, and here's the frustrating part, I think, for all of us, or at least some of us, is that we talk about all the things that we're considering, but then there's that one part that you mentioned earlier about the readability, the artistic value, the educational value. And so then you have to weigh, which one is more important in that particular text. And that's kind of what Pam was saying, it's really subjective. And so if the group of people on the committee say, wow, this is a powerful book, even though there's a lot of this language in there, then they're going to vote to keep it. There will be some times when there might be some value, but it's not worth what's here. So it's truly subjective, there's no doubt. And kind of getting back to what Jill was saying, when I first started looking at this last spring, the Texas law was in place. And in some ways it would have been really good for it to stick, because it was talking a lot about sexual explicitness with the rating systems. And the law was essentially saying that publishers would need to put a rating on each one of their books before it's placed in the library. And then if that was in place, what happens in Texas and California often happens everywhere else. Then publishers would have been doing that routinely. And then we could have chosen, okay, we're okay with a rating of 17 plus or 16 plus, because that's what the publisher had. But that's when, the court, I assume the Court of Appeals, I guess I don't know, but they put a stop to that law, so that's why publishers aren't doing it. So I thought we had it last spring. I thought we were gonna have a subjective standard we can use, but then it's on hold.
Rob, and then Pam.
No, I was first.
Rob, go. Pam next. Rob?
All right, I'm just gonna make this even go longer and throw a wrinkle on this. What if we just got rid of the review committee and it just comes straight to the school board?
You saying you add something to one, I add what?
Just get rid of the review committee. It goes, if the challenge passes through the media specialist, we just come here. It's done.
Well, that opens up a can of worms.
That's what I said. You know,
That might happen anyway, because if there's someone challenging a book, it's
Right.
likely that we'll continue to challenge.
but we could just cut out and not waste everybody's time before that, because if somebody's challenging it, it's coming to us anyway.
Okay, you're done? Okay, Pam next.
I do have extra language, that's what I was trying to get to, is add book looks, okay, so we already talked about that. And then the second bullet would be, if the book is not in book looks, then refer to preferred tools to assess age appropriateness for each book, before making available to students in the district. So that covers, so if it's not in book looks, because they're not all gonna be in book looks, then you use the other tools that you're using to figure out the age appropriateness. So that is the other language that I'm proposing that we put in here.
Similar one.
And I sent it to Vanessa, so Vanessa, you have it.
Yeah, a similar one, that's the other people saying booklet primary resource, if not booklet, use other resources, and you said use.
Yeah, I have language here that I sent to, are you agreeing with this language? She's agreeing with this language that I sent to Vanessa. It says, Book Looks rating system is based on the MPAA, Motion Picture Association of America. Before any book is purchased for ISD 15 libraries, including classroom libraries, the book must be looked up in Book Looks, and if listed, having a rating of 0 to 2 only, no book which is rated 3, which is parental guidance required, 4, no minors, 5, adult only. Okay, so you've got parental guidance, you've got minors, no minors, and adult only, may be purchased by any district employee. No books of these ratings, even if donated, may be accepted by any district employee to be used in the district. That's bullet 1. Bullet 2 is if the book is not in book looks, then refer to the preferred tools, which you already have 9 of them, I think you said, to assess age appropriateness for each book before making available to students in the district. Those are the 2 bullets that we would like to put in there.
So what I'm understanding, that to me, doesn't matter if it's an amazing masterpiece, artistic value.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if there's great educational value.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if the book is trying to encourage people not to go into prostitution or not to have premarital sex. None of that matters. It just matters on what one rating service says that may not even hire licensed media specialists. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, licensed media specialist doesn't really mean a lot to me because my parents and my parenting ability, some of these licensed media people don't even have children. I don't know who they are. They don't have children. I don't know what their life experience has been, but as parents, as being a parent, as being a grandparent, I don't want my grandbabies or my kids exposed to this kind of material. And yes, there are great literary art, artistic, there's great books that are great. And you and I have talked about, I've given you an example of things that they don't have to be sexually explicit to get the point across. Okay, if they're very well written and artistically written, they will get you scared to go down that route of prostitution because there's consequences to it, but they don't have to spell out this explicitness to get that point across. If they're well written, if they're educational value, if we can't find, I mean, this, well, you guys already know what I think, but there are very good books out there that can portray the same stories. And I talked about that at the last board meeting, young adult versus, the racy, mature, young adult or whatever. I forget, I have to go back to my notes to figure out what they were gonna use two different terms that the publishers need to start grabbing a hold of so that we don't have adult books in the school libraries. If they figure that out.
According to that one rating service, just one.
Well, I think it's in the courts right now, and I think that there's a lot of parents across the country that are challenging these books, and that's why we have lawsuits. And you know what? Let's let those lawsuits figure out what's gonna happen.
Nate, you're up next, and then Joe. Nate?
Book Book's mission specifically talks about profanity, nudity, and sexual content. It does not talk about the other items that we have deemed important for a book to be in our library, right? The artistic value, the educational value, all of those things. It talks about those three things. Again, I'm supportive of it being used, but if we put it in a policy, it limits what it's being used for, okay? It needs to be part of the procedure. And to Rob's comment about it bringing directly to the school board, I'm gonna tell you right now, I spend a lot of time on school board issues. I spend a lot of time during my busy life to focus on this district because it's important to me. I don't know if I would have time to review every single book that has been brought forward and give the time and effort that is needed to put into that a review committee is getting paid to do, right? They are directed, they have guidelines as to what they're doing, and they have the time to go after that. And I'm not speaking for all board members, but there has been multiple board meetings that we have had board packets that have not been reviewed by us completely. And we have questions and answers are in there. So if we're gonna add more to our boards, our board meetings, that we must do book reviews, because I will not make a decision without reading a book. One of the books is 900 pages, right?
And some of them are pretty long.
But there's some long books that are out there. And where does it stop? If we all of a sudden have 95 books at this board, we are not doing the things that are beneficial to advance this district if we are spending time doing that. So, Rob, I like the out-of-the-box thinking. I just don't feel that that is a good method because it's going to come to us anyways if it gets to that point. But I want to have the backing and the knowledge from that committee brought forward to us as well.
Joe, and then Rob. Joe?
So the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals blocked the Texas Education Agency on Wednesday from enforcing a state law requiring booksellers to rate the explicitness and relevance of sexual references in materials they sell to schools. The appellate court, one of the most conservative in the nation, sided with the booksellers who sued the state after claiming House Bill 900 violated their First Amendment rights. I'm pretty sure that's what our attorney was guiding us on. I'm pretty sure what is being requested to be put in this policy will violate First Amendment rights. I don't understand why you're continuing to walk on a path that will get us in trouble. I just don't understand it at all.
Okay, Rob?
First off, Brandon, thank you for staying in there. I would say go sit down.
You can sit down.
Yeah, second, I understand not wanting to review all the books, but they're coming to us anyway. If they get rejected like this one is, today or tonight, it's gonna keep going down the channels, and now we're wasting more people's time. And if these committee members are getting paid, so we're wasting their time and our money paying them to review these books. For me, it would just come here, get it done. It's coming here anyway.
Okay, anyone else?
I'll just,
Yep, Amy?
this policy was written up by MSBA, am I correct? So, so we all know that there's parents out there that are wanting this. MSBA reacted, and they gave us a pretty watered down version of a policy. And I feel like MSBA said, here you go. Here's your policy, but you can't do anything with it. But you know what? You can tell your public that you have a policy to remove books, but then I hear, well, we really shouldn't be removing them because we're gonna be, so what is it? Really, I mean, why would MSBA say that you can remove books, basically when they gave us this policy? But, oh no, you really shouldn't walk down that dark and scary road because someone in St. Francis may sue us because they want their kids to read sexually explicit material. Let's just vote, people. I'm fine. Either we vote tonight or I'm fine with waiting till the new board comes on. I think it'll come out even a different vote, more in favor of it in January or February with our new board members. I know that got elected, so we can either do it tonight and add book looks, or we can wait till February and have the next board. We have one of them sitting right here. And I'm sure that then they can decide. But MSBA said that here's your policy to remove books. So let's come on. They wrote up a policy. So let's add in book looks and let's go about our business.
Hey, Rob?
Yeah, I guess I'm going back to my thing of, let's take the lawyers out. We don't have to worry about it. It just comes straight to us. So that's what I'm supporting.
If you want to have a policy that's pretty much approved by your attorney to keep you out of hot water, if it comes to the board and the board says no or yes, you'll still be sued one way or the other.
Yeah, but it's already in the model policy, I believe, is that it comes to the board.
After the review.
Right, so I don't know what would be against, what would be suited for.
Okay, so we have a couple stuff to add into it, we can rehash it, talk about it, and then we'll take a vote.
We have a motion.
We have a motion in a second, and we'll see how it goes then. Okay, so first of all, you're saying right now what you want to add in, my notes are saying here, booklet as the primary resource. If not in booklet, use other resources or other, would you say, Pam?
Yeah, I sent it
You sent it to
to
her. Okay,
Vanessa.
so Vanessa has it.
Yeah,
Right,
if it's not in book looks, then you use your other resources to gauge the age appropriateness.
Correct. Okay,
You
that's
can
one
work
thing.
with that a little better if you want, but I mean, that's basically, I think I did okay with that.
And then eliminate number 7, you're saying, right? Eliminate number 7, all 7. Yeah, that's
Well,
perfect.
yeah, apparently we could get sued if we say on that explicit
Okay,
sexual, anal to anal, animal to.
So we don't want
Yeah,
to.
so we don't wanna.
We don't wanna get sued.
We don't wanna get, yeah, so we'll take
Okay.
that.
number 7 is pulled out, correct?
Right.
Okay, Nate?
I just had a clarifying thing for Rob, and for Amy. So having a committee was put into state law on August 1st. That specifically states that we must have a policy that establishes a procedure. The policy must not impair or limit rights. The policy must establish, to reconsideration will be administered by a licensed library media specialist under Minnesota rule, an individual with a master's degree in library science or library information science, or a professional librarian. I don't believe any of us meet that criteria, so I don't think it can come to the board or bypass that. It specifically states in the state statute that you must have one of those three.
But it can't come to the board.
It says at the end that it's finally to the board, but it tells you you have to have a policy that is administered by one of those three. So again, I just think that is not applicable.
Right, Rob?
I think we would initially go through the library specialist and then to us. That's what I'm trying to say. And take the steps out in between them.
Okay, Amy, on the policy.
Yeah, I'm not asking to remove the committee. I understand that that's an important aspect of this. That was part of MSBA's writing up of how to do this. I'm fine with keeping it. It will end up at the school board level at some time. And, you know, if they disagree with the decision that the committee made. My biggest concern is some of the dates of these. It's taken a long time for some of these, but that's fine.
Okay, Rob?
And then if we are voting on this, I would like to add to it that we go through the attorney before it gets approved.
Right, it'll be rewritten, and then the attorney can look at it again. That's what you're saying, Rob? Right? Okay, you're saying write the policy up,
Yep,
and then give it to the attorney, and we'll bring it back again. Correct? Okay, Jill?
Motion to table to allow for the attorney to review the amended motions.
Well,
The amended changes, I mean.
and I think that's non-debatable, is it? Well, you need a second, but
You wanna table it, right? Okay, need a second.
We already had a motion and a second
Yeah,
Table was
for
presidents.
but now she's saying table it. Yeah, but now your table needs a second. Is there a second to table what we're talking about for the policy tonight? Is there a second?
can we discuss?
No, debatable, no.
I'll second.
No, you don't debate it.
I'll second.
Second that. Okay, so we have a second, not debatable, not amendable, it needs a majority vote to table it. Okay, so it needs a 4-3 vote. We want to table it. Amy?
Can we just
Wait, what?
clarify that the amendment that she's put forth is going to the attorney and then we come back at the next meeting? Correct.
Or is it the next meeting, Jill?
no, there's no date.
Okay. It needs to be a date.
Next
As soon as we get
I would say the next meeting.
So we're voting on the table right now. Okay, so approve yea or nay on the table. Yea or nay? Amy?
So if I vote yay, that means I'm in favor of the
Table.
amended motion to table what Pam, the language she put in, and I'm fine with the attorney looking at it to bring it back. Okay,
Well, the motion, the actual document wouldn't be approved, just tabling it so we can get the attorney to approve the language, to bring it back for us to approve it, and we have the same
So we
discussion
would
already.
rewrite it, kind of another version with the motion.
I understand that. It's similar to what happened last time.
Yes.
So the language will be sent to the, I know by voting yes, I'm not approving the policy, I'm approving the language that will be sent to the attorney.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll say
Yea or nay?
yay.
Okay, Rob?
Yes.
Pam?
No.
Annette?
No.
Nate?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Star, yes. So it's a 5-2. So we'll get it all written up. And, Mr. Nelson does a great job, but he does it so fast all the time, as always. We'll rewrite everything, we'll add in what Pam talked about, what Annette talked about. We're still gonna keep the committee system going. And what Rob was talking about, when it won't be in there. All right? But now we come back and vote on that motion, right?
And I would like, discussion to ensue with the attorney. If she says that this is not permissible, then does that mean, you need to discuss that, does that mean our committee isn't permissible? Because they're using this stuff in the committee. So what I don't want is for you to come back and say, oh, our attorney said, no, we can't do this because you just might get sued. But yet you're doing it at committee level. Do you understand what my concern is? That this again is just another delay because we're worried about getting sued. When you're using this procedure, it may not be written in the policy, but you're using something very similar. It may not be book looks, but you're using a procedure that would remove books off the shelf. I heard 8 or 9 different versions of it. So we need to have a discussion of it, or why did MSBA allow districts to put forth committees to remove books? Then we need to talk about this.
Well, the difference though is that the rating systems are one component, but the whole book has to be reviewed for its value. So that's the difference. It's not just the rating system making the decision, it's a review of the whole text. Right or wrong, I mean, that's what the law says.
So if they come back with concerns of that we're just using the rating system in book looks, I would like discussion on, from our attorney, of what language can we put in so that the goal is to, you understand what the goal is of what will be the majority of this board. Slim majority, I'd say it's probably a 4-3, but it will be a overwhelming majority starting January 1st.
Okay, let's keep
And
going.
we understand what the goal, I'm just saying, you understand what we're asking for. So I would hope that there would be some discussion with the attorney so that you can't come back and say, well, this language isn't any good, you can't do this. I want to figure out how I can do it legally.
Yeah, I think.
You understand my question?
If it's not meeting the lawyer's interpretation, that you'd like to at least have some alternatives to discuss with you.
Send something back then of what I can do. And I can call Upper Midwest, but I don't want you to come back and say, no, you can't do that. Because then it's just like MSBA came forth with nothing that we can use. And
Frank will rewrite it, we'll get it sent down to the attorney, and table it until we see it maybe next meeting.
I just sent the words to Brandon, I just sent it to Brandon.
Okay, so we'll have it at our next meeting or possible December for discussion.
I think we'll get it next week.
Yeah, usually pretty quick. Okay, any further questions? If not, move on. Good discussion. So that the folks in the audience, please understand, the policy is going to be written with the additions that we were talking about here. It will go down to the attorney after Brandon rewrites it. We'll listen to what the attorney says, and then we'll bring it back to the board for another discussion and a vote. That's what we're doing now. All right? Good. Let's move on. Let's see here, number 6-7, so 6-1, approval of the election canvas, of the results that we just had here from the school board. Brandon, you talk about that? Who talks about it? Okay, you saw in your board book there, all the numbers, who voted in, who got the wins and everything. Brandon?
Yeah, before you is, we did get the abstract from the county this afternoon. And then it has the highest vote getters, the highest 4 vote getters. So you're passing a resolution to confirm that vote result.
So that's what we have. Is there a motion to accept the results?
So moved.
So moved by who, Pam?
Yep.
Thank you. Second? Rob, thank you. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 6-1 passes. Number 2, authorize insurance of certificates of election. Okay, Brandon, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so what that is directing, I think the clerk to be able to authorize that those certificates get presented to the 4 highest vote getters after the appropriate time frame has passed for any objections to the election.
Great.
And then for your information, there's the oath. There's 2 things in there, the oath and something else that would be given to the individual to sign at that point.
Okay. So the motion to accept.
so moved.
Thank you. There's a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. Discussion on 6.2.
I just want
Go ahead.
to quick say congratulations to those who ran. Thank you for all those who ran. There was quite a few that decided to run. Thank you for doing that. But congratulations to the 4 top getters. So I'm excited to watch you from afar, but congratulations.
Rob?
Just, I'm fine voting on this, just to clarify.
Yes.
My name is on it, so I just want to make sure.
All right, Dave?
To piggyback what Amy said, congratulations to the 4 that got the votes. I'm more excited about the number of candidates we had. That means we have some passion in our community to be part of this school board and to help this district, so that's a really good thing, and I'm super excited to see the new 4 come on board and see where we can go with it, so congratulations.
There you go. Anyone else? All right, discussion, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes for 6.2, thank you. 6.3, consideration of superintendent's contract, or motion for the contract. Nate, is there a second? Second by Jill. Discussion. Rob?
Wondering, was there a 2-year option discussed? Most of our contracts are 2 years, wondering why this one is not 3.
My knowledge, superintendent, never usually are 3, are
They can be up to 3 years.
Yeah.
So it can be really any time frame up to 3 years. Yeah, but, maybe somebody from the committee can present the district's perspective.
they? Okay, go ahead, Nate.
Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our discussion was based off of alignment with other contracts that are coming up, and that we didn't want to have a superintendent contract discussion the same time we were having a teacher's contract or other, that we've aligned all of them to have that and to help the superintendent work through negotiations and be part of that process as we move forward. That was one of the reasons that a 3-year contract was selected. Brandon, is that a good summary?
Any questions, comments, support? Okay, discussion. Rob?
I guess, and then the percentage, because this contract doesn't start until July 1st. Capital talks about this year's budget and what we will get in June, so just how we came up with the number.
The number of what, the percent of pay?
Increase.
Increase in pay, okay. What'd you come up with? Annette, anybody? Nate? Brandon?
Yeah, so it was a negotiated rate. One of the clarifying questions that the committee wanted to know is, although there's no parameters for this contract, what is proposed before you fit within the numbers that have been used for our projections, and that answer is yes.
Which is what, 2%, wasn't it? Most was 2%.
I think it's, I don't recall the exact.
Was it,
percentage.
I think it's 3, 2, and 2.
3, 2, and then 2.
3, 2, and 2 is what
Yeah.
is proposed in front of us.
Okay.
I have a question. Was, with a lot of our contracts, we look at other districts of similar size and we try to do market adjustments. Where is our superintendent sitting as far as other superintendents of similar size? Because most of our employees aren't at that high level. We're striving to get them there. Was that looked at and discussed? And the other question I have is 3% and 2%. 2% is a different amount when you're talking his salary versus our teachers that make substantially less. Was that discussed as well during the contracts?
Nate?
So yes, to both of those questions, that was discussed. We did, I believe, and I might be off, but I know we looked at 18 different surrounding districts or like districts. And with this, we're projecting some of those other contracts because they weren't settled yet either, but some were projected. And I believe it put around 8 or 9 in that ranking amongst, and Brandon, you might have to correct me if that was off, but I know it was almost in the dead center. And I know we've got some of those spreadsheets that we can share. And then the percentage piece that we talked about, we did talk about a known amount that is coming to the district every year with the state funding. We did not project in the inflationary rate because we understand that may, that law may change, those things may fluctuate. So we did not use that as a portion of an increase. We kept it at the level that we knew we would be getting. in, and again, met the criteria that we had set forth for forecasting and planning as a board, specifically looking at that 5-year plan that CISO has developed to help us.
Jill?
And one of the other things we discussed is year 3 of this current contract, we did not go back and renegotiate and open up that salary amount, where we did provide that same adjustment to all of our employees. If their contract was already negotiated before that 3% came in, we went back and made those changes, and we didn't do that with the superintendent.
And then did ask for it.
Right, exactly, but we didn't go back and do that for this contract, which we did for all the other contracts.
Any further discussion? Comments? Yep, go ahead. Amy?
I struggle with this one, not that, not that I don't have respect for Karsten, but there are areas where I struggle if I think he's the right leader for this district and this community. In some ways, I'd like to give him a 1-year contract and let the new board offer anything more than that, since we have a new board coming on in January. And that way, they're not right away having to deal with, I don't want to not offer him a contract because it's a lot of work to hire a new superintendent, and they may decide they want to keep the current superintendent. But I don't feel like it's fair that I decide the next 3 years when we have a brand new board coming in 3 months, that his contract isn't, I mean, we could even stave this off until January and I would be fine with that. For them to decide, because this is a 3-year contract and we have a brand new board coming on in less than 2 months. So I'm not sure how to go about this, but that's me speaking honestly.
Hey, Jill?
So for some of us who have sat at this table for a while, we understand that if a superintendent is not going to get a contract before probably the beginning of January-ish, they're gonna be looking for a different job, because all the jobs open up at that time frame, and I would not be opposed. I would support Carson in looking for a different job, because there's only that window of opportunity for superintendents to look, because they gotta get that contract signed before July 1st when their new year starts. And that's sending a clear message to our superintendent, we don't support him, and we don't want him back, and I don't support that.
Actually, Amy, you're making an amendment to the.
I haven't done anything,
Okay.
right now I'm just talking about what I'm thinking in my mind. It isn't that I'm not sending any message other than, I'm being honest, I'm not sure at times that I feel like he's the right leader for this district. I think I've struggled many times to have conversations at this board table that are important to this community, and offering a 1-year contract would allow the new board to work with them for a year, and then they could decide in a year I'm not for not offering them a contract. I don't believe that would be even fair sometimes to our new board, because they would have to right away start interviewing the process. But I am for, but I'm willing to listen to other board members, because I always come open. I'm just being honest, as I always am.
So we did discuss that a little bit in the committee. We talked about, new members of the board. I wouldn't call it a new board, because there's 3 members of us that will still be here. So it's not a new board. It's new members. That's part of the school board, right? Every 2 years, we could have the same situation. Brandon, when can we start negotiating a contract with the superintendent? How far out?
1 year. 1 year.
Right, it's 365 days we can start negotiating. So if we give a 1-year contract, and we talked about having the new members of the board have a year to work with him, really we'd be entering, come July, we could possibly be entering another contract negotiation, but they're just getting to know the superintendent. So again, we all have been in a position for a minimum of 2 years. We understand the goals that the superintendent has worked with us on, that has presented to us. A lot of the things that we have talked about and agreed have that 3 to 5 to 7 year plan when it comes to the process. And I'm really excited to see what he can do in that time frame, right? So that's why I'm very supportive of a 3 year. He has presented to us some of those goals, some of the breakthrough goals that we've talked about. We all know that stuff's not changing next year. We all know that in a 1 year contract, that's not going to change. He might make progress on it, right? Because that's what we're expecting, but it's not going to meet all those goals. Those goals are a long-term effect. And I highly believe that as we move forward, and there's nothing that says a board has to, we can move in 2 years, the new members of the board, we can look at the contract and go, you know what, we want to start talking again, right? Because you're not meeting the expectations. We have that ability to do that. Again, I'm supportive of that 3 year plan because of what he's presented to us, where we want to see this district go in those 3 years.
Annette?
I'd be supportive of a 1 year.
Okay, Pam?
I would also be supportive of a 1 year, for the same reasons that Amy has said. Kirsten and I have had many talks, but I feel like the can kind of gets kicked down the road. But I think it would be good for the new board to work with Carson, set their expectations, and go from there. I think it would be, so we either let the new board decide or go with a 1 year.
May I ask what you think that I'm not meshing with the community on? I don't understand.
We've had a really big, long discussion here right now that has been put off and put off and put off for a year and a half, just as one example.
Yeah, because of the book removal process?
Well, that's one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I
And there's
guess,
other things, and I don't want to talk all of that stuff here at the table from but the review that we gave you.
but here's the deal. First, in the evaluation system from a year ago, feedback was given, we set district goals, and we met nearly every single one, including breakthrough goals. None of those goals included things like removing books from the media center or removing flags from classrooms. None of those were discussed as part of my goals. I focused on reading, math, and behavior. And I thought that was kind of our goal together. Those are certainly the goals that I was given. And I want to make it clear, I'm one cog in a large team of people who made that happen. So I'm not kind of trying to take credit for it, but I was part of it. And I think we should be proud of that. The other thing I want to point out, if you don't mind, would be the values that are listed on that placard there. Those are the values of the school district approved by the school board several years ago. I want to know what I'm not fulfilling there. We've never had that discussion, but I feel like I'm doing it. So I feel like there's a subcurrent going on that people want me to make certain decisions. And I'm a believer in the democratic process where you have points and counterpoints. You have fair and balanced discussions, just like what should happen in the classroom. And I push back probably at everybody in this room at some point. That's my job. I can't just guess about what 2 or 3 members want me to do and do it. That's not the right thing to do. So if you're talking about values, I'm going to push back and say, what values approved by the board am I not fulfilling? What goals did I just ignore? And I think that should be part of the discussion as well. But I'll respect what the board, decides, and I'll move on from there. Those are my 2 cents worth.
So I'm speaking
2 months
for,
ago.
just to respond,
I
do you
was
want me to
out.
respond or
No,
no?
I'm talking.
All right, then I won't respond. Won't give it
So
away.
2 months ago, y'all were talking about the books here, you're talking about Pillsbury, you're talking about social emotional learning, and I never got a phone call. I have never received a phone call. So I go out to be proactive. And I ask people, county market, Bill's gas station, farmer's market, or any events that we go to. Any concerns about the school district? What do you see is happening in the school district? Anything we can help you out with? No, Mike, we like the school. We like the school. Yeah, there's bullying on the bus. We heard that last year when I talked to all the people. I got 57 responses I've been to now. I'm up to 57. Now, one person has brought up social emotional learning, Pillsbury, books, superintendent. None of them. They like our school district. And I've never had negativity except for bullying. So this is catching me off guard, what's happening, because I don't hear it. They don't, and they're honest with me, I'm sure they are. When I ask them, what do you see about our district? Can we do anything better? They love it. When I walk through the schools, we have good people here who love our district. And I don't see all this stuff, folks. I don't know where y'all get it from. I don't call people. I just walk up to them and say, oh, you're from district? Yeah, I'm from District 15. And then we move for you better. Don't like, we like the district. So that's where I come from. I do support the 3-year program. It's always been out there. 12 years on the board. I have never, ever yet seen anyone make an amendment or a change to a 3-year, 1-year contract for a superintendent. Amy's been on 20 years. Amy, have you seen anything like that?
I've been on 21,
21.
and they've been on for 3 years.
Yeah.
But in all fairness, just because doesn't mean that that's what you always do.
Yeah, I agree.
With all fairness, that's.
So, all right, now.
Well, I was gonna say something, but, I guess Mike didn't wanna hear it. I want to respond to you. Again, I have a good working relationship with Carson. We've been very open and honest with each other. I am speaking from my constituent standpoint. I've had people reach out to me and say, we need change. So I am that voice, okay? I'm that voice. I've said that before. We had that conversation with you, Carson, so it's not, shouldn't be a surprise.
Well,
Amy?
and I'll say I sit here, I've been on the board for 21 years. I struggle with this one. I do, because I personally like you, Karsten, and I don't know, I'll be honest, I'm always honest, but I don't know what to do with this one because the superintendent role, anytime you get someone new, you kind of lose a couple of years. That's just the way it is. Because they come on, they have to get to know the district and they have to get to know, and then they have to figure out what they want to do and what they want to make changes to. And Karsten, you've done really good things in a lot of areas. And I'm afraid that if I don't offer you a contract, that we're gonna have a standstill. And I've spoken to people within the district. What are your thoughts? I do have a concern of some things that do sometimes take longer because you think differently than I do. And many of the things that I've brought up are in my lane.
All right.
They're in my lane
Oh,
policy. I'm not calling you up, telling you what to do, how to manage, what to do with I don't do that. I know what my role is. But I am passionate about, and I have been passionate about, and what I really wanted for years was neutral classrooms. Ours are better than statewide. There are some ones in the state, and my daughters pulled them out of an Okanagan because they're not neutral. They're anything but. They have the Black Lives Matter sign. They did. I'm not sure if it's still up in Anoka High School, but they did. They have a whole wall in Andover High School on liberal presidents and, but there's nothing on conservatives. My kids pulled them out of there. That's why that whole neighborhood open enrolls to St. Francis. It's because we are trying, they understand. And there's just another guy kind of serious said, I'm open enrolling to St. Francis. I said, really? Tell me more.
So they're
Out of
coming here-
Anoka, yes. And he told me
choosing
neutral schools, it's huge with parents. Huge.
So what's my role in that?
I feel like when I was pushing, I've seen neutral schools the first time we talked about it. And I started talking to you about it when you became superintendent.
I have not seen another school district that's more neutral than St. Francis.
But I wanted something in writing. Because we're getting a lot of teachers that are going through the colleges and they're not neutral. Let's just be honest in this room. They're anything but.
But St. Francis is.
But we're getting teachers from these colleges that are very left, every one of them. The liberal arts and colleges are not neutral, anything but. And so, do I want something? Yes, I did for a long time. And it wasn't that I demanded it, Karsten. It said I wanted it to come forward to the board for discussion. I'm off in a month and it's just showed up on tonight's agenda. I'm thankful that it did.
But we don't have an issue here.
There's
Sure, there were
things that-
some examples here and there, but we addressed them. So I don't understand why I'm being criticized if people are choosing St. Francis because of what you want. That's a part that I don't understand.
Because I wanted it something in writing, similar to, I did.
Okay, also, in defense of the superintendent, as school board chair, I said the agenda. And I even said to him, why are we putting neutral back on the agenda? That's why do we do that?
It's
We're
never
neutral.
been on the agenda.
We're already neutral, we do a good job of it, I see it. Why are we gonna have discussion on it? We don't need it. Superintendent said, no, Mike, and you've been asking for it, let's have discussion. So I finally relented, did not put the monkey on him, you put the monkey on me. Because I have said no for many, many months on neutral. On the book stuff, we have said no for many, many months until we got the MSBA paper from the MSBA for the policy. So that's why that was a delayed process for many, many, many months. Not because of the superintendent, because we're waiting on MSBA to give us a policy. So do not put the monkey on him, you put the monkey on me. Because I said no about neutral discussion. He convinced me to put it on the agenda for this week. And I said, okay, sir, go ahead and do it. Nate.
So I'm not positive, but I don't think it's been an agenda item before me. But I know we've talked it's been in the administrative report. We have talked about neutrality since I've been on the board. We've talked specifically about a single flag in a non-classroom in the high school. We've talked about that multiple times on this board. And what you're asking for something in writing, that is our job. We set policy, not the superintendent. So if we're holding him accountable for setting a policy on neutrality, that is our job. And again, like Mr. Starr said, he sets the agenda. We as a school board have failed that. If we haven't discussed the policy and put it on there, that it does not fall on the superintendent. And again, the goals and the evaluations that we've done with him have not included, hey, we want you to write a policy. So because he might not agree with an opinion of one of us individuals on the board, we want to push back and say, hey, we only want to do a one-year contract, or we don't want to do a contract because you didn't do what we want you to do, which is our job. We write policy. That's like our sole job as a school board, not the superintendent to write the policy. Does he give us support and recommendations? Absolutely. But if we want something in writing, we can't blame him for not having it.
Give us up and then it will go.
So I don't know how many times in the last, 5, 6 years, I've heard, I want us to focus on the basics. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what we're focusing on. That's what we rated him on. I don't understand where all of this everything else is coming from when we're focusing on the basics. Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Because some of our professional development includes things that we've just discussed at this table, well, we don't need to get into that tonight, but we have discussed certain things that some of the professional development, and some of it's being pushed down from the state. And there's going to be lots of discussion on PELSB and lots of discussion on ethnic studies, and I'll be watching from afar from that very closely. But that's my concern, is ethnic studies. That's coming down the pipe.
Let's not touch that right now, that's social.
And I will
studies,
say,
we're gone.
in all fairness, that you should have, your job is, and I've been board chair many times, Mike. Your role as board chair is to run an effective and efficient board meeting. It is not to silence those on your board, and for you to only bring forth ideas that you agree with. When I was board chair, you called me and wanted to put masking on the agenda. This was January after COVID. And I knew the board, and I knew that they wouldn't vote to mask our students, but you thought we should. And you wanted to put it on the agenda, and I didn't say, nope, I'm not doing it. Nope, Mike, nope. I said, if you want it on there and you think you want a discussion, did I put it on there?
Yeah, and
I did.
and that was your
And
fault.
that's being a fair board chair, where you're not silencing those on your board. Your job as board chair, we all have election certificates, every one of us. So I'm just saying,
Okay,
if I recall, I have the floor, Jill, he's the one who said you can blame me,
you can.
not the superintendent. So
All
I'm saying he shouldn't have done it.
Put the monkey on me, I'll take it. I ran the board the way I wanted to see it run. I contacted a lot of people about running boards. I feel comfortable the way I ran my board.
Well, I hope in the future
Let's
board
move on.
chairs don't stifle
Let's move
board
on.
members that are duly elected by their citizens.
What I'm saying here, there's an amendment. You have an amendment, you wanna make it a 1-year contract. Is that what you're saying?
I haven't said anything.
Nothing yet.
I
Okay.
have not, Mr.
All
Starr.
right, do we have any further discussion on the superintendent's contract? Okay, and you see that the way it's written right now, the contract. Okay, we're gonna have a roll call vote. Amy? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Yes.
Thank you. Pam?
No.
Thank you. Annette? Thank you. Nick?
Yes.
Thank you. Jill?
Yes.
Thank you. Star, yes. Passes 4-3. Superintendent contract for 3 years.
Thank you again for the discussion. And as I've said before, I'm willing to find common ground. I really am. And hopefully discussion tonight on 2 important topics is part of that. Next time, we're going to talk about curriculum opt-out. There's some good news on ethnic studies. It's an elective apparently. So, we felt good when we heard that. And there's some other things I'm going to keep working on that because next time I'm hoping for a separate vote, regardless of who's on the board. So thank you again.
Okay, move on. The next item will be consideration number 6-4. New activity count, St. Francis High School girls soccer. You saw that on the action item. Is there a motion to accept? Thank you. Is there a second? Nate, second. Discussion on girls soccer. Discussion, Ms. Hamel.
Can you explain to me what this is and why it's a board decision? I guess the question I have, and I didn't get a chance to call, did we have some issues with some funding from a different, that wasn't the responsibility of the district? Was it the activities?
Recently, or was
Yeah.
That was the choir, I think.
Yeah.
That's-
prior?
Could
Is
have
that
been the
what it was?
choir with
No, I
the-
thought there was something just recent, where we lost some funds, or the bank deposits didn't get made.
Oh, yeah, that's a totally separate issue.
Okay.
And so what this is, it's a student activity account request. And so girls soccer is first on the list. And what they want to do is set up an activity account so that students can raise money that can be spent on students.
Okay.
Several years ago, there was a change in state law that requires the student activity accounts to be controlled by the school board. So we've been getting them approved in this way ever since.
All right, that was, because we hadn't seen it before, right? I haven't seen it. That's okay.
Maybe,
All right.
we're supposed to come up with a
I was
list every
confused
year.
with that. I think
all
that's
the
what you said,
student
like
activity
a choir
accounts,
thing or
so.
something.
All right, I think, yeah,
Oh, yeah, all right.
I have a question.
Question, go ahead, Annette.
Who's on those accounts then?
It's, what happens is, if it's approved, then we will have the advisor, who I believe is a soccer coach, a girls soccer coach, will need to sign a form along with the student officers. saying that they're going to agree to follow the rules that are in statute. And so when that happens, then students actually will decide how to spend the money, but the advisor is there to make sure that it's spent appropriately according to guidelines. So there are very strict guidelines on how it can be spent. So for example, they cannot buy bleachers for the school district. That's not allowed because this is for students. Money raised by the students for the students. They can pay for a coach bus to go to an activity instead of a regular school bus. They can buy some food for like an activity, you know, or celebration or something like that. You know, they can do those kinds of things, but they can't be reimbursing the school for staff. They can't be giving money away. They can't be, you know, doing those things. They're very strict on those. I'm sorry for babbling so much on that.
And is that a local financial institution, or where are those accounts out?
That's the biggest change that happened several years ago. In past years, student activity accounts could have a choice. They can either be with the school district or they could have their own bank accounts. This is statewide we're talking about. And that has changed. Now they're all board controlled, at least in St. Francis. So it uses our accounts. The students will sign off on the check request, but we still review it to make sure it's compliant and that there's money in the account.
So that comes to the board then as part of the consent agenda?
Yeah, it'd be one of the items listed.
Ralph? Ms. Karsten or Chris, can you kind of define what this is and the difference between this and a booster club?
Yeah. How about if I give it a crack first and then Chris can kind of relate it to what St. Francis does. So booster clubs are external organizations. They're not controlled by the school in any way. So they can raise their money, they can spend the money. Obviously, they're publicizing that they're benefiting the school, so there's that promise that they're making. But it's external, and they have their own accounts at banks or wherever they have. And, you know, they will donate money to the school district. We accept those donations and then we spend them accordingly. So that's the difference. They're external, these are completely internal, they're not kids.
I guess, so why do teams want this versus having more control of being a booster club?
That's a great question. We talked about that earlier today. Chris, I'm gonna give you the tough one.
That's actually pretty easy. We run concessions in the school district, right? And so basketball, soccer, wrestling, any sport or activity, you can sign up and work concession stand. And then we do profit sharing out of those proceeds. So if each activity worked the same number of nights, it would be divided up equally, right? The state law prohibits school districts from paying booster clubs directly. So those funds are earned by the kids in our institution and kept in our organization. And we have to have a way to account for them and spend them appropriately. So that's the biggest thing. We have one program that's a smaller program that doesn't have a booster club, and they only use student activities in lieu of a booster club, because booster clubs come with inherent challenges as well.
So teams can have both of these.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify.
Correct. And soccer.
Oh, go ahead.
Soccer would be one of those teams, if you approve it tonight, that would have a hole.
And girls basketball.
So what I'm hearing is one of the main focuses and reasons is so that if they work the concession stand, the money can be put into their student activity account versus it cannot be put into their booster club. So it's an easy transfer of money when these students work in the.
And I think, yes, 100% correct. I think one of the other real benefits from an educational perspective is kids are actually working for and earning something and deciding what to spend it on in their chosen hobby or passion.
Yep.
Right? Like that's good development of young people.
There's a motion and a second for girls soccer. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Soccer passes. We have alpine skiing next, identical to soccer. There a motion to accept. Thank you, Nate. Your second.
Second.
Thank you, Pam. Discussion. All in favor, vote. All right.
Nate, you made the motion.
Pam. Okay, any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Policy passes. Thank you very much. Approval of policies. You see a whole bunch on there. 102, 207, 413, 416, 418, 419, 513, 515, 521, and 532. The policy committee has been very, very busy. Is there a motion to accept the policies? Thank you. Is there a second? All right, Pam, discussion on all
I
the
would like
policies.
to make a couple of comments. First of all, thank you to Superintendent for all the support with policy development. And also want to thank Jill and Amy for your years of service on the policy committee. It's been an extra hour once a month typically, and it's arduous work. You're looking at a lot of documents, asking questions. I don't think we're going to have a policy committee meeting in December, so your last one was today, so I wanted to thank you for that work. It's really well done. We have a great policy review and revision process. So thank you.
Discussion, questions with all the policies we just read off. I think read for you. If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All those policies pass. Thank you very much. 606, we took care of that on the dock. Upcoming meetings and preliminary topics. Again, you give it to the superintendent or committee. Yes, I may add it to the agenda and I may not add it to the agenda. So we do have stuff out there in the future that's going to change maybe after January 1st. Or get a hold of us and let us know what you want to do out there. School board member reports. We start down, Mr. Nick.
I did not attend any advisory meetings, I know they're kind of early in, but I know that we get an update from them. Things are going very well. They still have a very engaged parent advisory group, which is nice to see, and that is a testament to how well that program is running. And then I just wanted to say a thank you to the district as a whole. As a veteran, I think they honor veterans very well this year with all of the programming, the individual class events. I received some letters in the mail from high school students thanking me for my service. So I know that class is doing that to our community, which is absolutely awesome. And we are seeing more and more community members attend our events for veterans. So thank you to the district as a whole. It made my heart full and was pretty special. So that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, I attended the district advisory ACT committee meeting, and some of the things that they talked about was assessments, what the purpose of those are for, how they work through the system. Kaylee Daigle gave a wonderful presentation about the event they held called Orange Shirt Day. And she did a slide presentation also about some of the challenges and the history of the culture that they were commemorating. We spoke also about s'more communication. We had an update on that while we were there. And we reviewed or discussed some of the assessment, or district assessment / policy 618. So a lot of information. It was actually a really good presentation and meeting.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
one more thing that I wanted to mention, that there is a program called the ACT fee waiver program that I think our public should be aware of. So if you meet certain criteria or fit within a certain criteria, there is an ACT fee waiver program available. So you would have to reach out to Sam Holland, thank you, Sam Holland, to get more information on that.
Never imagine high school went publicize that quite a bit. I would imagine out to everybody so they know about it. Yeah, good. Your comment, Bill. Your comment. Pam?
I don't have anything to
Nick, excuse me, Rob?
I met with Peggy and Jason at the transportation department, and I am now van certified, so watch out.
All right.
Went to the play last week, and it's just, every time I go there, I'm just amazed at what those kids can do on that stage. I would never be able to do what they do up there, so I'm just in awe of what they do. Just want to thank the public for re-electing me. And last is winter sports and activities are starting out, we started up girls basketball this week. Boys start next week. We already have a game next week, so look at your calendars and go out there and support these kids.
Amy?
Attended policy, we reviewed probably 10 policies that'll come forth for a first reading at the next board meeting. And that's that. I don't have anything else.
Okay. Joe?
Amy, are you on?
Hey, I want to give a shout out to one of our students here in sports, St. Francis Ryder Mold in Loyal D. He had all state honors in Class A boys cross country. So congratulations there, Mr. Ryder, for making the state honors. It's not a picture of him, but it's a picture of cross country runners. So he was a good little runner out there, did some good stuff for himself. Shark Tank, again, Superintendent talked about it. These young students who made their designs with the 3D printer, what a great tool. They're learning how to make stuff. And all their product that they talked about, they actually had to draw it out on paper, measurement, do this and do that, and then go to a 3D printer and print it. And they made some really neat looking items for Shark Tank to invest in their product.
So did you invest?
Pardon me?
Did you invest?
What we did as a group, we would select out of all the kids who had the best one we would invest in. And we brought that group in to say, we invest in your account. Yeah, so they all got, in the end, so each group had somebody winning.
And I think one of the groups will be here at the next board meeting to kind of give the same presentation.
Right, they want to bring, I don't bring their product in and show what they do with their little product. Yeah, and you, they're nervous, they're 8th graders, I mean, they were, how to talk, how not to talk and everything, it was interesting, it was. The Treasure Island was great again, the vet program again, next year, Mr. Nate takes over the vet program, I'll assist them on it. And then I went to East Bethel, 3rd graders for Veterans Day, and put the word out again, 3rd graders. I said, what do you know about veterans? And the young girl first spoke up and said, veterinarians, they take care of animals, they use animals. And I started laughing about it, really, he raised his hand up. I said, yeah, veterinarians are really good people. I let her go one more time, her hand went up, and she said veterinarian. I said, okay, now I'm gonna stop. I know what veterinarians are. Now again, I'm a veteran, a military veteran. You have to understand what a veteran is, and then from there we have good discussion, fun. And I read the book, The Poppy Lady. That's what we wanted to read last year and again this year was The Poppy Lady. The lady Michelle, who developed and brought the poppy, the red poppies, to sell, to raise funds for disabled veterans when they came home from the war. So it was a great story for the kids, and we talked about veterinarians. So it was a fun time. So thank you everyone for supporting our DAV, our military program yesterday and again today. Thank you very much. We adjourn, and it's now 9:18. Thank you very much.